black teeth.
And David, before you go back, because I don't have this written down, tell us what church you're with, and we appreciate you being here.
Sure.
So,
I'm a bishop with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
great. Well, and what ward? Where?
So I'm in the Nampa Young Single Adult Ward, which covers about half the city.
Great.
for 18 to 30-year-old single members.
Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for being here and leading us in prayer. We appreciate it.
Thanks for your leadership and your service for
Thank
all
you.
of you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Okay, let's start with roll call.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Bruner?
Here.
Hogaboom?
Here.
Levi?
Present.
Haverfield?
Here.
Skog?
Here.
So the only amendment to the agenda that I'm aware of is that we did have on here agency and external communications, the traveling table. And we've decided to push that back to March because some of the kids that are really involved in that, they wanted to have time to put together a presentation and they're excited about coming. So they're going to postpone until March. And so that's the only change that I know of on the agenda. Is there anything else? Nope. Okay, then we would stand for a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Bruner?
Yes.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Did I forget to do roll call for the whole meeting? Did we just do that? I think I did.
We did it.
Thank you. We did roll call? No, we did.
Yeah, we did.
Not for them. You did it for us.
Oh my, it's been a long day and this is the beginning of the meeting, so just, yeah. Oh, man. Okay, so moving along, here we go. Proclamations. Am I in the right spot on the agenda? Here we go.
Good.
So we have two proclamations this evening. The first one is Healthy Relationships and Safe Babies. And Dr. Megan Casper, are you going to come up? Yes, you're on. Well, actually, come on up and I'll read while you stand here. How's that? So I'll read the proclamation. And I so appreciate your work. Oh my goodness, it's wonderful. So we'll start with the proclamation, I guess. So, whereas Salter Medical Group has been serving the medical needs of generations in the Treasure Valley for over 70 years, and whereas the Salter Medical Group is committed to the well-being of all citizens that live in our community, and whereas the Healthy Relationships and Safe Babies campaign is focused on helping young men and women make good decisions regarding the safety and health of their relationships before they decide to have a baby. And in Idaho, between 2009 and 15, 2,887 children were physically injured in a violent crime committed by an adult family member, and 8,136 children were victims of a violent crime committed by an adult family member. This number includes all children who were victims in a violent crime, even if a physical injury was not documented. And whereas a recent nationally representative survey of youth in the United States discovered that more than half of the youth who reported witnessing domestic violence were also maltreated by a known adult. And whereas the physicians at Salter Medical Group support this campaign by talking to patients and making them aware of the red flags of controlling and abusive relationships and also what makes up a healthy relationship. And whereas the Salter Medical Group, with its long history of serving the health of the community of Nampa and Caldwell, promotes the well-being of its patients and future patients. And this February 2019, the Salter Medical Group launches the Healthy Relationships, Safe Babies campaign throughout the Treasure Valley. Now, therefore, I, Debbie Klingmeyer, the city of Nampa, Idaho, do hereby proclaim February 2019 to be Healthy Relationships and Safe Babies Month. Thank you. Thank you for your work and for your vision.
Well, thank you, Mayor Kling and Nampa City Council members. A couple of months I was able to come before you and introduce this idea, and I cannot tell you how encouraging your support has been. So thank you so much for that. We all want our babies to be safe. But as read in the proclamation, that unfortunately is not as good as we would like it to be right here in Idaho. Planning for a pregnancy is exciting. Women and their partners are looking at healthy diet, lifestyle, and it's a great opportunity to also talk about relationships and the health of a relationship that a baby would be coming into. It's a great opportunity to take a step back even before domestic violence and abuse occurs, and address some of those precursor warning signs. As an OBGYN, in the Sulzer tradition of the patient-physician relationship, I am so excited to have your support to take this work and make it available to as many members of our wonderful community here as possible, and expand beyond the doors of my exam rooms and the individual patients that I can touch to all the members of the community. Thank you so much for your support. I would also like to have everyone from Sulzer stand, just to go ahead and stand up. This is just a smattering of representatives from our group. There's tremendous support within our group as well.
While you're standing, would you just quickly say your names and what your role is?
I'm Julie Allen, the Executive Director at Sulzer.
Thank you.
Rhea Morrison, I'm the COO at Sulzer.
Marty Alsip, I'm the controller.
Cindy Hodges, and Human Resources.
And I'm Maria Torres, the Behavioral Health Consultant at Sulzer. I'm Suzanne Kirk, radiologist.
I love seeing the senior leadership team. Thank you for your backing and support of this. And thank you for the vision to be proactive. It's wonderful.
We're excited. We're excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and here's your proclamation. There you go. Thank you. And we have another proclamation this evening. And this is for Cabin Fever Reliever Day that is coming up. So this proclamation is, whereas our children are very important in the future of our natural resources, and we want to provide them with the positive influences of being outdoors while enjoying the excitement of fishing. And whereas it is our privilege to help educate our children on the fundamentals of fishing and conservation, our mission is to help build and sustain healthy communities by providing education, conservation, outdoor recreation in a safe and inviting environment for kids and families while enjoying the sport of fishing. Whereas the City of Nampa is honored to recognize the efforts of Kids First Cast and all of those who promote an outstanding example for our youth in our community. I therefore, Debbie Clay, Mayor of the City of Nampa, do hereby proclaim Cabin Fever Reliever Day in the City of Nampa, and I encourage the City of Nampa to congratulate Kids First Cast on their efforts to educate our children on the fundamentals of fishing and observation, and to join in the events and activities of this special day. So I think we have some Kids First Cast people here. Would you like to come forward? And unless I'm missing it, I don't think the date was on here, but it's this coming, well, it's the 15th. Is it the 15th or what date? The 16th. It's the Saturday, yes, the 16th.
I'd like to thank the City Council and the Mayor for inviting us here. This is our 7th annual Cabin Fever Reliever at Karcher Mall. It's been one of our biggest events. We've been established since 2011. We're a nonprofit organization, and we've done over 35,000 kids so far, and we're continuing to grow. We also get involved with fishing here in the local areas, the ponds, not only here in Nampa, but in Caldwell, Meridian, and all over. Our goal is to teach the kids the basics of fishing, conservation, and how the family unit works when it comes to fishing. We recognize that a lot of single-parent families are in the area, and we do get a lot of questions at the event there at Karcher Mall about how to. And this is just step one. We educate not only the kids, we educate the parents. The parents are the motivator for these kids. The kids have all the excitement they want. You can see it in their faces. They want to do this. They want to go outside. They want to fish. They want to camp. So we just help, we give a little shove, a little one, to the parents and say, hey, come talk to us. Come to our website. Come to some of our other fishing events. We also do fishing for disabled veterans. We have a pond over here. We take the veterans that are disabled from Boise, take them over to a pond, and they spend the whole day fishing. There's food provided, entertainment, and everything else. But it's not just only us, it's the community. The community supports these programs, not only ours, but the one you just heard from. Without community support, these programs wouldn't exist. I really do encourage the community to support these programs because they're worthwhile. And again, I'd like to thank the city council for us, and I thank you for the proclamation.
You are welcome. And Sandy, would you like to share? I know that you work actively with this group. Would you like to share something?
Thank you. I've been privileged to work with Kids First Cast for about the last 3.5 years, and just to see what they do with kids and the families and the opportunities they provide for them. And if anyone's interested, I went sturgeon fishing, and yes, I caught a sturgeon, and it was about 5 feet long, and those things are really ugly.
It's an amazing organization that touches hundreds of kids, so thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah. This next section on the agenda is where we have the opportunity for a Nampa resident wishing to speak on an agenda item or a non-agenda item. There is a 3-minute limit, and so Darren, thank you. So we do have a couple of people signed up, and Ken Hatchett. Are you here? Hi, Ken. So Ken, let us know if this is an agenda or non-agenda item, and thank you for stating your name and address and then sharing what you'd like to share with us.
It is a non-agenda item.
Okay?
Ken Natchett, 15 South Stillwater Way, Nampa, Idaho. I'm here to talk about what's going on a lot downtown. I think you guys are all aware of the cars getting towed. I've talked to a lot of people in the city and downtown, and they're not too happy about it. A friend of mine and 6 other people got their car towed away. The Saturday before that was 20 cars towed away. Now, there's signs on there. It says don't park there. So don't park there. You won't get towed away. That's the obvious solution to it. But people still park there. They're going to still park there. They're going to get towed away. It happens. I called around and talked to some companies that do this kind of deal, and they said they charge $150 to tow a car from a lot downtown. The cars that are getting towed from there are from a company called ATCO, Transmission and Towing. They are charging $365. We live in what is a free market. You can charge whatever you want. That's what we live in. But these people are getting overcharged. I just want people to know that don't park there. There's a downtown 1st Street South and 13th Avenue South. Don't park there and you won't get a ticket. You won't get your car towed. It's that simple. I would like to know, I have a question, then I'll be done. Does the city of Nampa do any business with ATCO Transmission and Towing? I'll be done. Thank you.
Ken, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing with us. And actually, this item is on our agenda a little later because this concern was brought forth at the last meeting, and we appreciate you coming and sharing your comments. Thank you very much. It's appreciated. Is there anyone else that had intended to sign up to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item this morning or this evening? I don't see anyone. Okay. So the next item on the agenda are our agency and external communications, and we pulled that item off the agenda. And now I guess we're ready for staff communications, and we'll start with Public Works Staff Report. Tom Points. I did forget mayor and council comments. Sorry, did anybody have comments? No? I am just on it tonight, my goodness. I will say we had one other proclamation that was read at the schools today, and this is CTE month, and we did it at Skyview High School, and it was awesome to see all the kids and the work that was done. So now, Tom, thank you for providing a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So Nate and I are gonna split up the staff report. He's gonna talk about wastewater, but the first item is about snow plowing. You have a report there. Our winter's starting to wind down, but there is a chance to get weather for at least another 30 days, so we'll keep you updated with more information as it comes in. We've had about 35,000 gallons of liquid de-icer and about a little over 300 pounds of salt we put down, and Winter's been going well. We got about 6 storm events. So I also thought it'd be an opportunity for me to show you this patch. This patch up on your screen is from the American Public Works Association, and it recognizes folks in public works that are out responding. So, and so you may see some of these on the uniforms of our crews, and to just give them some recognition that they're out there 24/7 plowing snow, or they're out there fixing water lines. You might see some of these on our bumper stickers on some of our trucks. So just wanted to let you know this is coming. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Nope, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. Wastewater. We make biosolids at the plant, and every year we have to report to the EPA where we're taking them and what we're doing with them. But what I'd like to highlight in the report is this last year, for 2018, we hauled just under 4,300 tons, and it was just about $80,000. Now, in the previous year, we hauled 4,600 tons at $92,000. And we actually saved a little money because we went to Pickle Butte, the local regional landfill, this year. So going forward, staff's working on ways to get the job done and be smart about it and keep the costs down. Now, big costs. Second item on the agenda, the wastewater upgrades project, $189 million of work over the next, we just say we need to be done by the summer of 2025. And a big part of that decision process is our design review committee. If you recall, council authorized us to put together this committee made up of 2 citizens, 3 industrial representatives, and 2 city council members. So they've been involved. Let's see, we just held our 5th meeting in January. So we're coming up on our 6th. That's about the halfway mark of a 12-month commitment for this group. And been doing some great work, great feedback. We get together at 7 in the morning at the library on the 3rd Thursday of the month, 7 a.m. This group's been engaged the whole time, Mayor. It's been great. And most recently is what we discussed was, what does $190 million of work look like? So we got to figure out how do we package it and build it. So what staff came up with and presented to the Design Review Committee in January was about 5 projects in size from a few $1 million of work up to nearly $100 million of work. So the big green area that you see covering most all of the plant, that would be the big project. And then some other smaller ones spread in there. So why the variety of projects? Well, we have a schedule to meet. And you can't read it. But if you can see where the February 2019 mark is on there, that's where we are today, and is where we're trying to get to is summer of 2025. That's the green bar. There. Oh, thank you. don't trust those things. So here we are today. We're trying to get out here. Today we are about, what would that be, 4 months away from when we're supposed to be packaging projects for design engineers to get the project out to them. So there's a lot of factors right now. We know what the schedule is, driven by a permit, driven by staff, contractors, engineers, capacity to get the work done. But there's a lot of decisions to make. We've got the recycled water program. We're working on the reuse permit through DEQ. When we find out the answer to that, it could change how much money we spend in this period. I mean, it could change anywhere up to $20 million a decision based on what we build in the next 6 years. So when you start factoring all these decisions at the rate the project is moving, you go back to the project package, which maybe starts to make sense now, because you're trying to figure out how do you make the decisions and allow for the contractor to build on the best decision. So that's where we're at. We're trying to figure out how we bring this forward, looking at some alternative delivery methods. Traditionally, Public Works is delivered under a lowest bid, which would be like you go design it, you bid it, you open up the bids and award. But we're also looking at progressive design build as an alternative, where you bring a design contractor team in and try to capture on scheduling, value engineering, capacity of the designer and contractors to get the work done in the time that you need. So, any questions?
No, I do have a question on your first report. So, moving to Pickle Butte, my understanding is that the Canyon County increased the rates. Did that impact your solids, the rate for your solids? If I remember correctly, it did, that the rates have gone up as per Canyon County, increasing the rates at Pickle Butte, but we budgeted for it. But it's still less expensive than transporting it, is that correct? Based on the new rates?
Correct, Mayor. The rates went up, but they're still cheaper than the alternative Simcoe landfill, and they're also, Pickle Butte is closer, so.
And is there any indication of limiting the amount that we can take there?
So, at this time, Pickle Butte has made a decision that they want to try to share the resource, and that's the landfill, and they can only handle so many loads of biosolid a week. So they've kind of said, Nampa, you get to come here a couple times a week, and Caldwell, you get to come here a couple times a week. Okay. That's where we're at currently.
And then back to your design build or design, the different ways that you can approach the wastewater treatment facility. When do you anticipate having a decision on which method you're going to use?
Yeah, so we're working, the design team with Brown and Caldwell and staff, we're working extremely hard to take back the information we've gathered from the Design Review Committee, the information we've gathered from staff and Public Works to build a firm final recommendation. Also in April, there's a design build conference that Public Works will be attending to gather additional information, and we hope to make a decision early summer.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Nate? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And our next staff report is from Facilities, which is an update on upcoming projects. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Wanted to get a little information out to you guys on what our progress is to this point this year on some of our projects, some of the things you'll see coming before you for approval in the coming weeks, and kind of give you a little bit of an overview of where we are with our work orders and things like that as well. So, as Facilities Department, we're charged with maintaining our buildings and facilities and maintenance, improving city property. So in the interest of transparency and greater communication, we wanted to bring this forward to you, kind of give you an idea of where we are in past projects that have been already approved this budget year and the things that are coming forward to you still ahead. So currently, we're managing 44 projects for fiscal year 19. At 4 months in, and the items that you see here on the screen are the items that are over $25,000 that we will be coming to you for contract award and authorization to sign. They are all funded for this year from various different budgets. They're identified, the areas where they come from there, and we've got probably in the next 2 months when you'll see most of these come in. So this project list is coordinated with appropriate departments. Funding sources have been identified and identified through the fiscal year 19 budget. So historically, last year, in fiscal year 18, we managed 83 projects. 14 of those projects were equal to or greater than $25,000. So those were the projects that we brought to you for approval last year. The remaining 69 were under $25,000, much smaller. So some of those that you don't typically see, $5,000, $8,000 projects, things like that. So projects is definitely one of the things that we focus on, but we also have a work order program. And difference between work orders and projects. Projects are planned. They're generally a little bit of a higher dollar value, and sometimes they take a little bit more time. Work orders are things that become apparent at any time. They can be emergent work orders. They can be somewhat planned, but there's preventive maintenance to those on electrical, plumbing, different items like door maintenance, things like that. And to this point in fiscal year 18, we had completed 444 work orders. And to this point in fiscal year 19, after 4 months, we are currently at 573. So the numbers are up a little bit. I think we're doing a better job of capturing those and reporting those. We're using some work order software now that definitely gives us a much better tool to keep track of those and the types of work orders that we have in the breakdown. But just for this year, that kind of gives you an idea of the different types of work orders that we've had. And we expect to have probably a record-setting year on work orders. Everything seems to be on track for that. So just wanted to give you this update. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer questions for you.
Thank you for the update. It's appreciated. Thank you. That concludes our staff communications for this evening. We'll move on to unfinished business. So the first action item is the first reading of ordinance to authorize the creation of the sidewalk LID 166. The public hearing on this was on January 22nd. I will say that we have received a number of calls, both at City Council and the Mayor's office, regarding individuals that wanted to opt out of the LID. Some discussion occurred regarding grant options at the last meeting regarding CDBG grants. We realized that those, it's not possible to implement them at this time. And so from a citizen perspective, it'll probably, the soonest that we could implement them is actually, I believe, next year. And Darrell, I think there was some a consideration to bring forth something at the next council meeting. Would that be?
Yeah, whatever, as far as our Director of Economics, Beth Einek, as far as, sent me, and I believe you were
Yes,
copied
I
in
was.
on that, as far as some possibilities. So whether you want to do that next meeting or this meeting, that's your call, Mayor.
I guess the question that I have, based on the information that I have since received and I understand is, even if we did have opportunity to consider them, we could not affect them at this time. Is that correct, Robin?
Yeah, that's right. So Mayor and Council, so using CDBG funds for the sidewalks and the project is just fine. It's just that the timing of it is we're too late into the CDBG project year this year. Staff does plan on bringing forward a project for our project year, was 18, CDBG 18, because it's always a year behind. So staff does plan on bringing that forward in April. So we can have funds that would be dedicated to sidewalk repair through the CDBG.
For those that met specific income thresholds.
Right.
That would then qualify. The issue there is that they have to be considered before any work commences.
Right.
So this year, it would not be possible to do that at this time unless we changed the ordinance language. And so at this time, I think the council had voted to move forward with the LID. And so really, it's a process question. Today, we can read this, do the first reading of the ordinance and go through the regular process. We can do the first reading of the ordinance and pass it under suspension of rules, which then it's done. I do recognize that this was voted to move forward, but with all the questions that came forward and the inquiries, I thought it's good to at least acknowledge those inquiries and the information. And so did you have anything else to share on that?
So with CDBG, just wanted to bring a couple of things to think about with CDBG in this process. So when, I think in the last meeting, I wasn't here for the last meeting, but I understand that it was maybe thought of to go through our critical needs loan program. And where the city is telling citizens that we need to have this repaired, that puts CDBG at an awkward position where the city's saying you have to do it. It would be much easier to make it a grant for those citizens that meet income standards. So we can say if they're 50% LMI, they meet a low income threshold, we can give them a grant for whatever their assessment is. And we can decide as a city, when staff brings forward the project, we can decide what that amount would be that we would dedicate to a CDBG project for sidewalks. So for example, if we decided, okay, we can spend $60,000 and the threshold for LMI, this is our low to moderate income, this is what they have to meet. And so we can decide in there. But also the other part that I wanted to bring up is that if the city decides to go forward with this and then we bring in CDBG funds, CDBG requires that we have Davis-Bacon wages. And so it would require that the whole project have Davis-Bacon wages. So it would affect the whole project. Now, let me say this, wages are so high right now, I don't think that we would have an issue, but I mean, that is a consideration. So there's a couple things to think about when using CDBG funds to help out with those people that are struggling to make this happen.
In a grant process, if we applied the grant process to a citizen that said, we're going to ask for permission to opt out of the LID, then does the entire process have to be subject to Davis-Bacon wages? Or if they opt out of the LID and work directly on with the city through the CDBG funds and acquire their own contractor outside of the city contract, could that be separate?
From what I've been told, no.
Okay.
That's what I understand. I could research that more, but from what I understood with our CDBG consultant we talked to today, it does definitely, when you bring in CDBG funds, it affects the whole project, whether it's before the LID or it's or after the LID projects, that the HUD sees that as it is affecting the whole project.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So Madam Mayor, if I may, okay,
Yes.
if I ask questions to Robin. So from what you sent regarding the critical home loan repair, what's the downs, what's the negatives on that?
So HUD sees it as the city is requiring someone take out a loan. And the HUD doesn't, they see that kind of as like predatory lending. And so that's where we get in a little bit of a pickle there. So we would have to go through some extra steps to see if we could move that forward through a critical needs loan if we wanted to go the loan route.
Okay, my understanding from what Beth, as far as sent, though the interest rates on that would like 0 to 3%, and that's something that could actually be in action this fiscal year. I realize the research, I mean, that's time, that's energy, but.
So administering a loan also for staff is a lot more effort. And if we're looking at maybe 50 people qualifying, we don't have the staff resources at this point to be able to qualify that many people. We could maybe prorate it over a couple of years. We could make that happen, but there's that too.
So Mayor, bottom line, this is just my personal, I'm just listening and researching more. You know, I'm just concerned with us, I voted in favor of this because our sidewalks are in disrepair and but I am not real, let's say at this point in time, ready to continue with forcing people who are on fixed incomes and do not have the means when the city owns the sidewalks for them to have to repair their sidewalk without us knowing what their financial ability is to pay. And so whatever the process is, I guess I would like to put a pause on this. So if that's a different wording or whatever the case is, otherwise I will not be voting as I did at the last council meeting. I'm not one that often changes my vote, but I think we need to look and search, and I feel like at this point in time, I'm not ready to continue with the vote as requiring all these 101 residences to have their sidewalk forcibly repaired, and I think it is, we're forcing them. Okay, thanks.
Mayor Kling,
Yes.
if I could. Robin, one thing that I don't want to do is take away our CDBG funds from those entities, those associations that you give and that we give to. Will that happen if we continue with this side, which I voted no against it, by the way. Thank you, Darrell. But is that going to affect the money we give out to the community, like Salvation Army and everybody else that we need to give to?
No, Councilman Rodriguez, no. We can there's some funds that could be reallocated from prior years that were not used for projects, and then we could use a portion of money from the new funds that we hopefully will receive from HUD. But that's not considered a public service project. So public service projects are like Salvation Army and Meals on Wheels and those nonprofits. So there's a certain section of funds that can be dedicated with CDBG funds for nonprofits. Then there's another section of funds that are non-public sector projects, like our city parks that we've done, and those are different. Even though it's part of the whole bucket, they're considered different within that bucket.
So are we putting ourselves in somewhat of a difficult position at this point by continuing with this, or not? Or are we going in the right direction? I don't think we are, but from a legal standpoint of what you are required to follow regulations with HUD.
So I think the best scenario with CDBG funds if we wanted to help low to moderate income folks, the best way with our staffing level and with having the way that CDBG funds are required to work, we have a whole 4-month process we have to go through, just parcel by parcel by parcel, to get them ready to go for using or to fix their sidewalks.
Yeah.
So the best way would be to have a project come forward for this next fiscal year, so starting October 1, And then we would dedicate a certain portion of funds just for the sidewalk repair for these folks that have been identified who meet the low to moderate income threshold.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another question, when you mentioned the loan program, which is our home owners loan program,
Yep.
versus the mandatory LID, they have to repay that. Are they repaying with an interest rate on that?
With the home loan program, Darrell was referring to is that, Mr. Buhner, sorry. What he was referring to is there is an interest rate. So there's a varying level depending on what the person brings in on their income. For example, if we have an elderly woman who's living and making about $18,000 a year, her loan would be deferred. So she would not pay back the loan until the home is sold. So the proceeds of the sale would pay back the critical needs loan. And then the interest rates vary from 0 to 3%, just depending on what they're able to pay.
So under the current LID, mandatory LID, what is that payment? Who could speak to what is that payment plan?
Mayor, the LID program is based on whatever the bonds are sold at. So we do the project, confirm the assessment roll, the bonds are sold, and the interest rate is based on the bond sale.
Is there any option if someone cannot, can communicate hardship to where they cannot afford it? What happens then?
If payment is not made, there are many different options available to the council to recover them, up to and including foreclosure on the home. Not that that has ever been done in the city to my knowledge, but there are varying levels of things we can do up to that.
So the interest rate is based on the bond, and they would be required if they had no means to pay, and if it were put as a lien against the home when it was sold, because they could not pay, would they have to pay the amount plus whatever that bond interest rate is?
Correct.
Okay, and do you have any idea what the going bond interest rate is, or what we have
I would probably defer to our finance director on that, but normally they're around the 5 to 6%. I don't know what the current ones are.
Sounds about right. Okay, in that range, so 5 to 6% versus 0 to 3%. Okay. Well, at this point, I just have to, I fully agree. I'm very concerned about the hardship that we're placing on our people with fixed incomes. And so I just need to say that for my own peace of mind, that people understand. I don't support a mandatory LID. We need to fix our sidewalks. This is a time where I think we need a third alternative, right? We've been either mandatory or not, but there's got to be an option that cares for our citizens to where we get sidewalks repaired, but we're respectful of those that cannot afford to get them repaired. So that said, under this unfinished business, this is an action item, and it is the first reading of the ordinance to authorize the creation of the sidewalk LID. At that, typically, and you'll see this on the two upcoming agenda items, there's a request to pass under suspension of rules. So I'm going to leave it to the will of the council at this point. So we'll go ahead and read the ordinance, and then it'll be up to the council how we proceed.
An ordinance establishing and creating local improvement district number 166 for the city of Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, for the purpose of constructing improvements to the city's sidewalk, pedestrian ramps, drive approaches, curb gutters, and other related street improvements in the district, providing for a kind and character of the proposed improvements, providing for said district shall be considered a modified district pursuant to section 50-1705 Idaho Code, describing the boundaries of said district and the properties therein to be benefited by the improvements to be made, providing for a total estimate cost and expenses of improvements to be levied and assessed against said lots and lands to be benefited by said improvements, providing for the issuance of bonds and payments and the costs of expenses and said improvements assessed against and said lots and lands, providing for the appointment of the city engineer to prepare the necessary plans and specifications for the improvements hereby ordered, and the preparation and filing of an assessment roll and a local improvement district report pursuant to the provisions of the section 1712 Idaho Code providing for procedures for the filing, certifications, notice of hearing, and confirmation and said assessment roll, and for the notice and payment of assessment installation, so confirm creating certain funds and dockets, providing severability, and providing an effective date.
Okay, will of the council.
Madam Mayor, fellow council members, this is an unexpected 15 minutes on something we'd already passed. Keep in mind, the city attorney said there's liability for these sidewalks that are pretty bad shape if we don't have a plan to repair them. So I anticipate that it's going to get reversed tonight, it sounds like, and know that that liability is more real for the city if we cancel an already existing plan. If we're going to change it, I would like to see this go through and then change it next year. But get this one through this year right now. Right now, it's up or down. So with that, I'm going to move that we approve and authorize the creation of the sidewalk LID 166 under suspension of rules.
Second.
Further discussion?
Madam Mayor, I don't expect legal on this to be totally aware. Do we have a history of a lawsuit? I realize that one can always come. Do we have a history of a lawsuit for a sidewalk disrepair?
Mayor and Council, Councilman Bruner, I'm not sure of any specific ones, but that's something that's handled through the property insurance through ICRIMP. And so ICRIMP would handle that and pay out the claims, which would then raise the premiums. So I'm not aware of any significant one in the recent past, but that doesn't mean that there has not been one that ICRIMP has handled in the recent years.
So that would go to Debbie. Can you speak to that because they come through your office? Are you aware of any?
The only claims that I am aware of has been with the downtown area where we went in and fixed and worked on the sidewalks. But those are the only claims that I've ever seen.
That have now been repaired? It was the ramps, the ADA ramps and how slick they were. Is that it or was it sidewalks?
No, it was the red bricks
Right.
with the tree kind of raised stuff, and we were getting a lot of trips and falls. And those are the only claims that I've
I
known.
recall that. So, Madam Mayor, if I may, Councilman Skog, then you are, so what your proposal is by making the motion is that these current 101 who are included on this LID, that they go ahead and do their repairs, be forced to do that, but then we'd reconsider for the next batch? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, with the ideas that the other council members have expressed.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor, council. That's my understanding. If this motion were to fail tonight, that the 50 or so people who want to be part of the LID, we're basically canceling the LID. And I've spoken with a lot of them. They're happy to have the LID because it's their only way to pay for it over the 10 years at a low interest rate. Some of them said that they'll be able to cut a check for the full amount of the repairs, but a lot of them said that this is the best mechanism for them to pay. And so what we're doing, unless we start from scratch, which I don't want to spend more than all the time we've spent, because we've already spent a lot of time on this issue, is we are removing that unless we come back with some other form of LID, which changes the whole ballgame. I know that there will be some frustration, and I am sympathetic to the fact that there are some people who have financial hardship, but as a city, we require new developers to put in curb gutter sidewalk, and it's expected to be maintained, so.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm prolonging this, I know, but if I may, if Daniel Badger, can I ask you a question, please? So we have 101 residences on this LID. Is there a minimum number that have to be included on the LID to get the rate that we are getting from the contractor?
No, Councilman Bruner, there's not. We have not put out the bid yet. If it were council's will to change the number of participants down to voluntary or some other number, we would just adjust the bid accordingly.
And that would be, Madam Mayor and fellow council, that would be my proposal if we made a change. For those who want to do this and can get the discount from the LID for the 10 years, that's what I would be in favor of. Thanks.
And Mayor and Council, if I may, just to make it clear, if we do want to go down the voluntary route, we would have to start over with a new creation of an LID, another protest hearing, and a new ordinance.
Mayor?
Yes.
Daniel, may I ask you another question, please?
Get your step.
Just stay up there.
To follow up on Councilman Bruner's question, if we've already given a bid as approximately how much this would cost to the homeowners, but it hasn't gone out for bid, could you explain how that works?
So we estimate to the property owners what their assessments will be based on our history of bids that we've received on previous sidewalk LIDs. And so that's how we do that. We recognize that the bids may come in a little high, a little low. We tend to estimate high in the hope that we aren't telling them after the fact that it's going to cost more.
Thank you. And I do recall at our public hearing that there were a few people that came forward and testified that they had also had their project bid out, and it was coming in considerably less than what it was coming through the city, just FYI. Thank you.
And we don't know what contractors they were using, whether they were, there are lots of people that do contractors or do concrete. There are specific requirements for work within the public right-of-way. They have to have a public works contractor's license. And so many of the concrete contractors around that do foundation work and driveway work and that type of stuff do not have that license.
Thank you. That's good to know.
And I would assume that, Mayor Kling, that includes bonding and insurance that the contractors would have as well.
Correct.
Mayor Kling, question for Maren. Were you here 3-4 years ago when we had the workshop on this?
Mayor and council and councilman, no, I was not here, but I did much of the research that contributed to that workshop.
Okay.
Yes.
And it was a difficult decision at that time, but the reality behind it, based upon legal advice, was we assume a responsibility as in this position in leadership, but the liability that's associated with that's out there, it's a tough choice. It's not an easy thing. So we all have sensitivity for those that are on fixed incomes. But it was meant to be a path to create safe pathways throughout the city. So anyway, we had a 2 or 3 hour workshop.
So, Madam Mayor, if I may just respond to Councilman Haverfield. My understanding was there's over 4,000 letters sent out for this, right?
Correct.
I mean, there would have been 4,000 possibilities. And so what I'm asking for is a pause. I mean, the chance for liability is still out there. We're talking about liability now. You're talking about a small percentage of what needs to be repaired. Is that not making sense? Councilman Scott, you're shaking your head.
That's correct.
Well, he's not agreeing, so.
Okay, explain the 4,000 letters, if you would.
The process that that engineering goes through to create the LIDs is we send out letters to every property owner in the zone. So not all of those are bad sidewalks. We send those letters out to everyone asking if there are people that have a desire to volunteer to have their sidewalks repaired. If they don't have sidewalks, they can volunteer to have them put in, any of that kind of stuff. And that's where we get our volunteer pool from. The 4,000, it's not 4,000 to all bad sidewalks. It's 4,000 to the entire zone.
So, Madam Mayor, I think this is my last one, I think. So follow up, Daniel. So in your estimation, I don't expect an exact number, how many sidewalks in front of residents or side of residences in the city of Nampa would you say are currently in disrepair? Just at rough, I mean, I know that's out of
We had
the
an
hat.
estimate of that 3 years ago at the workshop, and to be honest, I think when we looked at, during the workshop, we were looking at one zone that we had evaluated, and we looked at about 300 that were in really bad shape, and there was, a number more that were in need of, they were not in ADA compliance due to cracks or heaves, those types of things. So that was one zone. We have 7 zones.
7 zones that could be about around that number also.
Yeah.
And I'm not a math major by any means, but that would be
so you'd
possibly
be
up to 2,100. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, a question for legal. Thank you, Daniel. Our ordinance states, if I remember correctly, that the property owner, it is their responsibility to maintain the sidewalk, but the city owns the sidewalk. So therefore, if there were a liability issue, wouldn't a legal claim first go against the property owner and then secondary come to the city or to ICRIMP, and then there would be subrogation, et cetera?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilman Levi, Councilwoman Levi. You're correct in the sense that property owners have a responsibility to maintain their property and the sidewalks in front of their property. But the city also has responsibility over any public right-of-way. And so it would be likely that both parties could be named. There have been times where private property owners have been named in suits, and I do remember from Snowpocalypse, we had several claims that had both private owners and the city in conjunction named because of snow removal. And so it'd be the same idea, but yeah, that would still be processed through the city's insurance.
Thank you. And if I might follow up with that, Mayor, I go back to what I've been saying consistently for the last 3 years. I appreciate the fact that the LID is there for those who want to use it and those who need to use it. At the same time, because the ordinance is so confusing, and I heard today in another meeting that I was at, homeowners are not going to sit down and read through the ordinances and find out that they're responsible for the sidewalks. That's going to be kind of a surprise for them, even though the city owns the sidewalk. So I fall back again is we need to be educating the people in the zones that this is what the ordinance says. Here's a mechanism available to you if you want to partake of it, but I don't believe we need to be forcing that upon them.
So with that, this has been the discussion time. I will say that even though this was agreed upon 3 years ago, I will say it's a new mayor, it's a new council today. And even though it's taking time tonight, our citizens are worth the time because that's why we've been elected, is to discuss and consider the impact that we have on our citizens' lives. So that said, I think it's time for a roll call vote, and it's going to be up to the council how to move forward. So unless there's another comment, roll call.
Rodriguez?
No.
Bruner?
No.
Levi?
No.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
And I'll break the tie with a no. So with that, I'm breaking the tie vote. That means the LID does not move forward as originally planned. What I am going to recommend is that we move forward, even if we have to go through a process again. It has been indicated that we're interested in allowing the people in the LID, and I want to pause. We voted on that. Can we take another action item and vote to amend the ordinance and come back with an amended ordinance to allow those that opted in to participate in the LID?
No, Mayor and Council, you'll have to start over from the beginning and do a new district, create a new assessment roll and everything from the beginning. So notice letters will have to go out of the intent to create an LID, and then those people will be able to come to a protest hearing, and that process will start from the beginning. So it has to be re-noticed.
Do letters have to go out to every citizen, or can they only go out to those that have opted to participate? Now, other than re-noticing it, can we then reach out directly to those that wanted to participate?
The notice has to go out to any that would be involved in that district that's going to be created. So anybody that has the opportunity to participate in the area that would be assessed would then need to have notice that they can come and participate.
That we're going to be offering a voluntary LID. Okay. Does that require action from the council?
At this time?
Correct.
No.
It does not, okay.
Well, it's a staff, the council and staff can work together.
Okay, perfect. Okay, item number 4.2 on the agenda. This is the first reading of the ordinance for annexation and zoning to RS6 at 2420 East Amity Avenue for Stephen Warren for connection to city water and sewer services.
An ordinance determining that certain lands commonly known as 2420 East Amity Avenue comprising of approximately .95 acres more or less lay contiguous to the city limits of the city of Nampa, county of Canyon, state of Idaho, and that said land should be annexed into the city of Nampa, Idaho as part of the RS6 zone, declaring said lands by proper legal description as described below be part of the city of Nampa, county of Canyon, Idaho, directing the city engineer and planning and zoning director to add the said property to the official maps of the city of Nampa, Idaho, repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith, providing for an effective date, and directing the clerk of the city of Nampa to file a certified copy of the ordinance and the map of the area to be annexed with Canyon County, the state of Idaho, and the Idaho State Tax Commission pursuant to Idaho Code Section 63215.
This has been requested to pass under suspension of rules.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Brunner?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And the last item, and I realize it's 7:04, but we're going to finish unfinished business. This action item is the first reading of ordinance for annexation and zoning to RS6 at 2724 Somoli Drive for Alan and Karen Wheatley for the connection to city sewer services.
An ordinance determining that certain lands commonly known as 2724 Seminole Drive comprising approximately .51 acres more or less lay contiguous to the city limits of the city of Nampa, county of Canyon, state of Idaho, and that said land should be annexed into the city of Nampa as part of the RS6 zone, declaring that said lands by proper legal description as described below be part of the city of Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, directing the city engineer and planning and zoning director to add said property to the official maps of the city of Nampa, Idaho, repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith, providing for an effective date, and directing the clerk of the city of Nampa to file a certified copy of the ordinance and the map of the area to be annexed with the Canyon County, state of Idaho, and the Idaho State Tax Commission pursuant to Idaho Code Section 63215.
This has been requested to pass under suspension of rules.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Who was the moved?
Victor, second by Darrell. Roll call.
Hogeboom?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Okay, as usual, section 5 is just the pending ordinances. And now, new business. And for those of you that are here waiting, we're running a little bit late. So we are now going to move into our public hearings that are scheduled. And we only have one public hearing this evening. And that public hearing is the modification of annexation and a zoning development agreement, ordinance 3554, instrument number 200629961, between BB1 LLC and the city of Nampa by amending Exhibit B, commitments and conditions, and introducing Exhibit C, the preliminary plat for Laguna Farm Apartments pertaining to parcel number R3041700000 at 1652 Idaho Center Boulevard. This is a 24.53 acre property in a Gateway Business 2 zoning district in Government Lot 1 and the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 7 T3N R1WBM for Kent Brown representing FIG, I'm saying these probably wrong, Laguna, excuse me, Farms LLC, and is the applicant present? Thank you for stating your name and address.
For the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood, Meridian, Idaho. I'm going to just update you what the Laguna Farms looks like and where we're located. Previous map that Norm put up, we're in a GB2 zone. It's a gateway business zone. When annexation took place, it talked about commercial. It did not hinder that there was no residential, but it spoke specifically to what you would have to do if you were trying to go forward with a commercial use. As commercial has developed and gone forward since that annexation period, the CWI campus has expanded. The Idaho Center has drawn in other businesses, and that whole area has drastically changed. This property really didn't lend itself to a commercial use, and so therefore, as we're proposing, and you have before you kind of a site plan. Where's your little pointer? Please. So I can point at something, you can see what I'm talking about. We have the two commercial lots that are along the Idaho Center Boulevard. They would be adhering to the conditions that are in the current development agreement. If you analyze what they speak to that these businesses don't interfere with the residential people that were existing there. And that makes total sense because we do have to the north of us residential uses, and in this enclave to the city here are two residential uses also. The other side of the road has commercial uses. There's a tree farm there. We are surrounded on our easterly side by CWI property. They own all the way up to Cherry on either side of the Phyllis Drain. Within the site, I guess overall the site, we're to the north of the CWI campus. We have two-story buildings along our southerly boundary that would be adjacent as a neighbor. And we also, everything on the east end here, they're all two-story buildings. And then at the ends of these buildings, those are 2 stories, and then the middle, they're 3 stories. Along the commercial and the existing residential properties there, those are 2 stories. The thing that makes this a lot different than a lot of the other multifamily projects that you see is that these have garages. There's 2 and 3 door, or 2 and 1 door garages with each one of the units. Driveways. You don't see a sea of asphalt that you kind of see to the south of us in the CWI campus. That would be very similar as what you would see in an apartment complex. As I've done a few in Nampa and brought them forward, these are townhouse living. So for the residents, this is pretty much as close to single-family use as possible. They got their garage, and they have the open spaces. The part that's unique here in the middle is that there's a park space that these units open up onto. The front door is into the park space. I'm going to put a picture up to show that. So the roads are on the other side of the property, and then this park space in the middle is in those 3-story buildings that are there and that does make that a unique site. We have a clubhouse and pool here in the center with a rec center on the inside of the clubhouse. In this playground area that is attached to this vertical open space, there's a tot lot and a picnic area. There's a volleyball court, a dog park over here, a tot lot over here. We have 1,100 feet of the Purdom Drain pathway that is the regional pathway. So we have a number of amenities that are throughout the project. We think that it's a good use, and that's why we're seeking to amend the development agreement. I'll stand for any questions that you might have.
I don't see any at this time, but in that this is a public hearing, you will be asked to come back at the end, and you can respond to any concerns or questions that come up during the process.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Staff report, Norm.
Again, Mayor and Council, this is a item that comes forward from the Planning and Zoning Commission. and they are recommending approval to you of this development agreement modification. The original development agreement was entered into in 2006, and the applicants clearly stated the reasoning for the modification, desire to go to a residential use on this entire property rather than the commercial as previously proposed. And since that is something different than what was approved in the original agreement, it must be modified with the approval of the council. And you have listed in the staff report information on this development agreement. Basically, in summary, beyond what the applicant has indicated, these buildings are in combination of sizes. 7 4-plex buildings, 19 8-plex buildings, 11 12-plex buildings. There's the 14 common lots and a couple of commercial lots out front. And the pictures that have been provided by the applicant, also at the commission, there were floor plans of the different designs, suggestions, concepts, as well as the elevations or the renderings that you see in your packet, and some of which were portrayed on the screen this evening, would become a part of the development agreement modification, showing exactly the Laguna Farms site plan concept, preliminary plat, if you will, as well as the renderings and the floor plans of these buildings. They would be entered into the exhibits of the development agreement along with the legal description and a modified agreement we have put together in draft form that you have received in your packet this evening. And there were a few property owners present at the last hearing before the commission. Some of those residential owners, I believe most of those were the two to the south, were represented there. I did receive a call, I believe, from someone to the north during this interim period, just asking about it, indicated like they were just wondering what it was about, didn't express any opposition, and so this is basically the background. Any questions?
Mayor Kling? Norm, there's just the one entrance to this whole development?
That's what I understand, yes. And engineering can speak to the aspects of that if you'd like
Yeah,
them to represent.
that would be fine.
But the preliminary plat was approved by the commission, as well as the conditional use permit, which under the Gateway Business Zone, it does need a conditional use permit for the apartment use. Both of those were granted by the commission, subject to the approval of the development agreement modification this evening, so.
Okay. I'll let Daniel come up and speak to that then.
Mayor, Councilman Haverfield, the preliminary plat for that, for the subdivision, they have their one main entrance here. They've proposed an emergency access only right along this northern boundary, which would satisfy the fire code requirement where there are more than 29 units there.
I was wondering if that was their intention, it just wasn't defined on this plat.
On this conceptual rendering, it's not defined. On their preliminary plat that went to Planning and Zoning Commission, it was defined that way.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, Daniel, question. With the one ingress, egress, I was just wondering, how is the traffic going to approach Idaho Center Boulevard?
So, Councilman Levi, they have completed a traffic impact study, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall, it showed the need for a turn lane here, which they would be required to install with their development. Other than that, the only needs in the area it showed were under the background traffic scenario, which would not be the developer's responsibility to remediate.
Thank you.
Mayor Kling, one more
Yes.
question. So is this an ITD road?
Councilman Haverfield, no, this is a City of Nampa
It
road.
is city. Long-term, do you see a median having to be put in there due to the amount of traffic being generated on Canada?
Councilman Haverfield, currently there is a median in this area here for aesthetics, not necessarily for access control. The traffic study did not identify a need for a right-in, right-out there. Not to say that at some point in the future that might not become necessary, but not at this time.
So it'd be full access. The other access as far as for fire engine, access back to, will that be to Canada then? Or will it loop back through to that one road?
No, it would be all the way out to Canada. If they looped it back to that one road, that would not satisfy the two-access requirement.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Daniel, thank you. So this is a public hearing, and we have one person that is signed up in support of, and that is John Carpenter. John, are you here? Good evening. Thank you for telling us where you're what company you're with.
I'm with TO Engineers. Thank you, John Carpenter.
Thank you.
I just signed up in support, and if there's any engineering questions, I would address them. I didn't have anything further to add.
Okay. Any questions? I don't see any.
I can touch on the traffic.
Okay.
So what the traffic study had was, as you're heading south, there's a center turn lane required, so you can go left in the development. And as you're heading north, there's a right-hand turn lane. So those two.
So you have a deceleration lane then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thank you. So at this time, we don't have anyone else signed up in support and no one against this project. Is there anyone here that had intended to testify that did not get signed up? Okay, seeing none. For the applicant, Kent, do you have any further comments, or would you like to answer any of the questions brought forth?
The item that I didn't cover is that there's a great need in this area with the expansion that's taking place out next to the cheese factory. In our planning and zoning hearing for a project that I did across the street, there was a discussion that there's 2,000 jobs that are going to be close here. The other improvements that have gone forth with Winco and others have made this part of the town a good connection to the freeway and to the businesses. To me, it's a good fit. It's also a good fit with the college. We have spoken to them and asked them about what they wanted as a part of moving forward, and they kind of said that they didn't want to deal with any residential uses for, they didn't want to get into the residential business. They said that viewed as a bunch of headaches to have dorms and so forth, so they're happy to see someone else providing those opportunities. And that's all I have to say.
Madam Mayor, if I may, and I may have missed it in the packet, what price levels? What's the windows here? Do you have an estimate?
That part I
Still wait
Yeah.
to see what the demand, supply and demand?
It is, this developer is doing these in multiple states. They're in the middle of a project. So the units that you're seeing are actual buildings that they build over and over again. And they've worked out a lot of the difficulties with them. They're 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom
Okay.
units.
And if this is approved, what, do you have an estimate of window of
We'll
time?
hopefully, like a year from now, be trying to go vertical.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other further questions at this time?
One last one, Mayor Kling. Sewer service, there's no issue as far as with utilities?
The sewer, we're going to have to do some improvements in front of us, but it's available out in Idaho Center Boulevard.
It's allocated as far
Yes.
as, okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. The public hearing has been open. If there are no further questions from council, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Council discussion or motion?
Mayor Kling, I will make a motion to support Planning and Zoning's recommendation to approve this as presented to us this evening.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, further discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Vogelboom?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, just,
Yes.
let me just compliment on the green space and the play area. I mean, that's, for these developments, that is so key, and so thank you for including that.
My thoughts exactly. Good job. Thank you. So that concludes our public hearings, and we are going to move on to new business. And we will start with Item number 6.1, this is an action item to authorize the acceptance of the bid by the Municipal Emergency Services and acquisition of 60 new SCBA packs for the Nampa Fire. Go ahead and come forward while I'm talking. For the Nampa Fire Department in connection with the AFG FEMA grant. And this has been approved by legal counsel. And Chief Roberts, is there anything you'd like to share? I think you wanted to congratulate or thank someone.
We did. This has taken a lot of work. As you know, these AFG grants do not get awarded very often. This is a 2017 Assistance to Firefighters grant from the federal government, from FEMA, Homeland Security. And so what it is we received a $1.4 million award for 9 different departments throughout the Treasure Valley. And so in doing that, our part of the grant is $450,000 to purchase 60 air packs, which those, they have a 10-year lifespan, and so ours are up, and so we're replacing those 60 air packs at this time. But with that comes hours and hours and hours of work, coordination with those other 8 departments to coordinate, getting them to all agree and understand federal government grants. And I just want to recognize Captain Bobby Jardine. I don't even know how many hours that he spent on this, and it's been he probably ought to have a head like mine because he's dealt with the difficulty of it. But I want to take time to just appreciate, we have very talented people in our department, very creative to come up with all the ideas to make this work and function and be accepted through, as it's presented to the Assistance to Firefighters grant. And so I just want to let you see our talented captain. Captain Jardine serves in our training division and does a very good job for us in that. So I just wanted to take some time to appreciate the members of our department for stepping in and helping us where we need the assistance. So.
Thanks. I'm just,
Thank you for
Madam
the hard
Mayor,
wording. Yes.
I'm just curious about how many hours did you track?
I'd say, probably at least 100 hours on duty. Yeah, I was working as a driver.
Right.
So at night I'd get out, stay up late and work on
I
it.
just,
Get
probably
up
should,
early.
I take it your wife is out here, probably could ask her, she'd probably have a better estimate. A little more? Okay.
Thank you very much for your work on this. So I would stand for a motion to approve and authorize the acceptance of this bid.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Brunner,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
So would the council mind if I move action item 6.8 up and take that next? Well, since we have guests here that are waiting to present?
No objection.
No objection.
No objection? Okay. So this is to authorize the mayor to sign the encroachment agreement with Dennis Harmon at the corner of 10th Avenue North and 4th Street North. And Tom Points is providing, Tom, are you going to provide the staff report? And then Dennis, you'll be right after Tom. Whoop. And we'll have you come forward and show what you're working on. Thank you. Sorry about that, Dennis.
Yeah, Mayor Council, so we have a request for an encroachment agreement at 10th Avenue North and 4th Street. So owner, Mr. Harmon, would like to put in a book kiosk. It looks a lot like that one standing over there, but let him tell you more about it when he comes up. He wants to put it behind the sidewalk on the corner of his lot, and we've reviewed this, and it's a good, safe location, and we recommend approval, so.
Thank you, Tom. So Dennis, now, go ahead and come up, and I had the privilege of meeting Dennis this past week, and thank you for sharing your vision.
Thank you, Mayor Klang and council members for meeting today. The idea of the library boxes were in the north end of Nampa. There's a need for books, I believe, and our proposal was to get a location by the warehouse that we have, and then try to locate 10 others on the north end and certain corners, and we requested some books, and so we can combine about 60% children's books in those. There'll be 3 or 4 shelves, and then some adult, but there's a real need drugs are prevalent in the neighborhood, and at times it's improving, and just the people that are there have, in our areas, and a couple blocks in our area, have been there quite a long time, and we'd like to pay back, what we've had a good relationship in the neighborhood, so we'd like to continue it, and we, hopefully that we can place more of them around the town.
And Mr. Harmon, I'm forgetting your name that designed these.
Platt.
Mike, I am so sorry.
Because
Thank you.
he designed it and put it together.
Beautiful.
We talked together of kind of what the ideas were, and keep it low enough for children to be able to reach in, and maybe put a LED light on it, or a solar light for, some after hours or in the winter months. But so our proposal is to have a few of them around town, not just that one. But so anyway, I wouldn't be here if it were without Mike. He is put it together, and so I appreciate him and his time that he's put into this too. So thank you.
And you're going to be maintaining these,
Yes.
correct? And you're going to be stocking them, watching for any damage, anything to them. We'll trust that people respect them because they're beautiful,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, hopefully that'll, so we'll have a few extra just for replacing, and then we'll just cover our neighborhood and the areas that we've located them, and then just make sure, they can be replenished. So we're getting a delivery of books on Friday, so the ladies of the library are presenting, bringing us 320 books is what I've requested, and 60% would be children's books. That's the hardest part of all of this, is children's books. By the time they can get books that they would hand over to us, they're just torn up. They're just used, and pages missing and stuff. So that's the biggest struggle, is children. And I think that's our focal point for us, is on the north side, is the children there are in need. And so I hope that.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Levi.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One of my questions you asked, and I appreciate that, Mayor, was how you secure the books. And I'm really glad that you'll be working with our friends at the library. That's pretty exciting. And I love the opportunity to get books out there for both adults and children to increase literacy. A question I do have is, I've seen kind of some of these in surrounding states and cities, et cetera. So the books, people can take the books and look at the, read them, and the idea is they would bring them back, but I've also become aware that some people will just put some of their books in there.
Right.
And
I
is
hope
that
that-
kind of the idea you're hoping for?
That's the hope, is that they'll actually bring some of their books in and keep it, replenish it. If they want to keep the book, I want them to keep the book. We just want to push, reading and in our supplies that we have. I think with the amount of people that are interested in participating in this, I think we won't have a problem.
And follow-up, please. So if you notice that the kiosks are running low and they're not being restocked, do you just contact the Friends of the Library again, or how does that work?
Yes, we'll do that first, and then even probably have a list of people that we can access, or phone numbers, people that will work with us in the north end that will supply books. So at the location where this one will be, we'll have a storage area for just books. So children's books will be our focus, but I don't think we'll have a problem once we put the word out.
It's a great idea. Thank you, Mr. Harmon, and thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Kling. Dennis, what a brilliant idea. Where did you come up with this?
Well, Boise's, we've got several locations that we've seen this, and never really, I've had this warehouse in the north end for 20 years. This 2018 would be 20 years, and I've never done anything like this.
Really?
Finally, the light went on.
Well, this is, this one here at 10th Avenue North and 4th Street North, that's right next to a park.
Yeah, it's just down
Right.
the street, yeah.
Right, and then that's where they have readings, and of course, you can go and have lunch there during the summer months.
That's right. Yeah.
So how many do you anticipate putting up throughout the city?
Well, my focus was really the north end and to locate 10. But initially, we'll have the one, and hopefully the variance will allow us to put up, at least 8 other locations. We thought we'd better hang on to 2, just in case some were damaged. So we'll probably try to locate the other, the 8 initial as soon as possible. And then,
Oh, wow. No, thank you for stepping up to the plate for Nampa. This is a great idea.
thank you. It's a
I like it. I like the way it looks, let alone what there is all about.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for bringing your books. Okay, Councilman Levi?
I'd like to make a motion. I would move that the council authorize the mayor to sign encroachment agreement with Dennis Harmon at the corner of 10th Avenue North and 4th Street North.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, Council. Dennis, it was a pleasure meeting Dennis at his shop and going over the library. So it's great hearing about the connections, Friends of the Library, coming through with books. And maybe we can even get some advertising of library programs, maybe even a little slot and other ideas that can come together to help promote the stuff that's similar in our city. What I was wondering is to prevent Mr. Harmon from having, well, unless he really enjoyed this evening, having to come back here a second time, a third time, a fourth time, a 10th time. Is it possible and included in this motion to allow staff to, does every single encroachment have to come before council? Or can we approve for Mr. Harmon and give sort of mayor and administrative approval for the other 9 based on the recommendation of staff?
Mayor and council, you should probably have an action item in the future that authorizes the mayor to sign a number of encroachment agreements.
Yes, that's
So you'll have to approve it tonight as it's drafted, since it's a public item that the
Gotcha.
public needs to have notice of. But in the future, you could have a template that you use and say that the mayor can then sign this template for X number of locations and have those locations designated, so then he can just have all of those agreements signed whenever they're available.
Perfect. Thanks, Maureen. So I won't amend, but maybe in the future motion, then they'll be wrapped in together. So thanks. That was my question.
Thank you, staff. We'll get that done. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Item 6.2 on the agenda is an action item, which is a resolution adopting procurement policies and procedures. This has been reviewed by legal. It's my understanding that our procurement policies had not been updated since 2005, and legal provided initial review of this and has said it's good to go. This is needed for a grant, I understand, that the police are submitting for, therefore we needed the updated. These may come back again as we give further review to them, but we are doing this so that we can actually move forward with the grant. So I would just stand for a motion to approve the procurement policies.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
6.3 on the agenda is an action item to award the bid and authorize the mayor to sign the contract with American Mechanical for the Water Works Truck Shed Heat Project.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
The next action item is a discussion on adding no smoking signs to the Nampa Library Square. So Rick, I see your name here as speaking to this, and then we've got a number of staff that are prepared to actually provide comment, I believe.
Sure. I can speak to it. For several months, I've been talking to various members within the city, and I think our packet includes 2 letters from our director, Claire Connolly, who's here this evening, as well as, I think, Beth as well, spoke to it. Just today, I had lunch at Boise Fry Company with guests from out of the city, and it was embarrassing to note as they looked at Library Square, and I'm not exaggerating, 12 smokers over the hour and a half we were there, including vapors. I didn't want to put a picture up here to shame the smokers, but there's 3 smokers that were literally standing right outside the front door. I observed one gentleman with his child go to the front door, and he literally kind of shielded the child on the inside, and I'm guessing to try to shield from the secondhand smoke. I counted at least 50 butts in the cigarette butts in the fountain. And this is not in any way a criticism for those who are charged with cleaning that. I'm guessing that this is a daily challenge. And that was just today, because I walked across the street and just counted. So I've noticed within other municipalities and cities and public spaces like this, I've talked to Parks and Rec Director about kind of just what the nationwide environment is about even parks. And while this doesn't include a proposal to deal with parks or playgrounds, you just hope that people have common sense. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who lack common sense and some decency and respect, and so they're smoking in areas where there's children. So I thought at the very least we can start with Library Square. I've also heard complaints about potential patrons and other people. We have numerous complaints of patrons who say that the secondhand smoke is a deterrent to their library experience. Some who have allergies, who just avoid coming. I've gotten feedback from about, I know it's anecdotal, about 200 members of the public. There was only one person that said that they didn't want to see it happen because they fear that we're going to start telling people what they can and can't do. I have less a concern with alcohol, where someone's putting alcohol in their own body, as opposed to secondhand smoke, which is a property rights issue, and blowing secondhand smoke and carcinogens into the air in an area that's frequented by children and pregnant women is just, I guess, that's about all I'll say, is I just seen it and wish we can stop it, and at the very least we could put an ordinance. I know that you can't change all behavior, but at least it's a statement about the type of community we want to be and envision, and it will empower library staff to at least notify if they want. It's up to them, and I know some might be less reluctant or more reluctant, and some okay with kind of notifying smokers that they need to move along, or they're not allowed to smoke in that immediate area. So that's kind of what prompted this tonight. So the library director, Claire's supportive, members of the library board that I've spoken to, Econ Development sees it as something that actually enhances economic opportunity. I've heard about American Title there, that one of the concerns there is they even had for a while, I think their own private security guard that they had to hire because their patrons were not enjoying the experience in Library Square. And so that's kind of what prompted my request that this would be an action item tonight.
So we had considerable discussion on this particular topic at our directors' meeting this morning, and our directors do have some comments on it. And I think I will say that there's a lot of support for this. It has to do with enforcement. How broad do we go? Do we stay with the library? Would council mind if we allow staff to provide some comments?
I wouldn't mind. Sometime, Madam Mayor, I would like to have Chief Huff come up and.
He would, and he's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to start with Beth Einig, if you don't mind, Beth. Because one of the questions that came up has to do with the jurisdiction of Library Square. And so Beth, you've done some research, and if you don't mind speaking to that piece of it.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, as you're well aware, the Nampa Development Corporation constructed Library Square, has still ownership of Library Square. There's a lease agreement in place between NDC and the city for the library itself, but the plaza piece is governed by a common area maintenance agreement, and I've submitted a copy of that to legal counsel today. But so if the desire of council is just to have signage at Library Square saying this is a no smoking area, that would be action by NDC and requires permission from the Gardner Company to just do signage. If we wanted to move forward with some type of ordinance that said by city code, no smoking in these areas, then that certainly is a city council discretion and would require NDC to abide by that city code. So that's just a little bit of nuance to your discussion tonight and whether you want an actual ordinance or just signage and kind of where that decision authority lays. From our perspective, we're just
finishing up the process of analyzing a lot of community input. We had focus groups throughout the fall with stakeholder groups. I think there were more than 10 different meetings that were held with a variety of individuals. And then we have received about 700 responses to an online survey about downtown. And one of the things that has repeatedly come up, and I put in my staff memo, was that the desire is to have a family-friendly downtown. And so we certainly see kind of this opportunity to talk about no smoking as an important component to that. About 30% of our residents are under the age of 18. This is a staggering number. It's our largest demographic group when you break it down by 10-year increments. So we are younger than the city of Boise. We're younger than the national average. We have a lot of kiddos. I'm responsible for 2 of them. So we want to make sure that downtown is a great place for kids and for families to be. And I know that with our offices right there on 12th, a lot of times I see families that have to navigate around some individuals loitering, not necessarily doing family-friendly things on benches in front of the fountains in front of our office. And really, when we talked about where the library should go 10 years ago, there was a lot of discussion that it should be an anchor to help bring more people into the downtown, that we want folks not just to go to the library, but to park in the garage and spend a half a day downtown and have lunch down there or walk around, see the depot. And I feel like right now the environment that we have is not necessarily conducive to those families being able to enjoy the full downtown because of some of those activities that take place. And recognize that enforcement can be a challenge, but also have seen in downtown Boise, where they have a pretty strict smoking ordinance, that citizens start to police it themselves, that people aren't afraid to say, hey, this is a no smoking area if there is signage out there, or there is an ordinance on the books that says it's no smoking. So we just encourage council to explore this further. There's a lot of models out there for ordinances if that's the way you want to go. I know Lewiston's considering an ordinance right now that's really focused around public spaces. Boise obviously has a pretty extensive ordinance. There's Twin Falls is considering one. So there's a lot of places to look at best practices and see how we could tailor it to meet Nampa's needs. And also recognize that, you know, there are employees that work downtown, and where do they go if they smoke, and how do we make sure that there are still spaces that's appropriate for folks to use, but that our number one concern is the broader residents and making a family-friendly downtown. So, any questions?
Thank you, Beth.
Madam Mayor, quick question. Beth, is it already prohibited 20 feet within the front door of the libraries and no smoking, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Any further questions for Beth? Beth, thank you. Chief Huff.
So, I guess I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate on this one. So, I agree with everything that you know, that's been said, and Councilman Hogebom, what you're saying. I guess the thing I would caution you on is actually doing an ordinance. You know, I agree with the signage. I did educate myself a little bit this afternoon on the city of Boise, and they have a strict no smoking ordinance that is 20 feet. And believe it or not, they actually said they write a lot of tickets for it. Currently in Nampa, it wouldn't fall in our call volume to be able to actually send an officer out. You know, if somebody wasn't, they were standing in front of the library and they were asked to move along, just with the type of calls we respond to, I just don't want to make any false promises, because right now we wouldn't send an officer to that particular call. However, at the ordinances in Boise, it's a $50 fine, but they said they have, I guess, more juice for the squeeze out of the bars and stuff downtown that actually allow the smoking to go on, even though it's a green zone, and that's $100 to $1,000 fine, depending on the amount of citations that are issued. So, I guess I'm kind of in the middle on this one. You know, if there's been some people in front of the library that have been smoking, I totally get what everybody's saying, you know, the smoke going back into the library, and that's not pleasant, that's not what we want downtown. However, you know, there's 4 bars in the downtown area, and we don't have the personnel to police that. We don't have a bar team like Boise does, and that's where the majority of their citations are issued, on the weekend nights and stuff, you know, with the people smoking. So, I guess that's my opinion. You know, if you put signs up there, I agree with what Beth said, you know, that would empower the citizens probably a little bit more to, you know, speak up and say something. Where I would see the police to get involved more in the disorderly conduct side if somebody refused to put it out. Unfortunately, at that point, it's probably going to turn into a yelling match and potentially a battery or, whatever that circumstance goes to. But as far as actually just putting an ordinance on the book to have an ordinance, I don't know if that really would be worth the paper it's written on right now with the amount of people that we have.
Madam
Okay.
Mayor? I'm sorry. Chief, you already have an ordinance against littering, so somebody throwing cigarette butts could potentially be cited for that.
Yes.
So, Madam Mayor, I mean, so as far as an ordinance, we're just talking about currently the potential of an ordinance for Library Square. We're not talking about whole downtown, or is that open for discussion?
It's open for discussion, and that's something that I believe Beth has mentioned in her document
Right,
and has been
I read
discussed.
that.
Right.
And I can only speak that if I'm in favor of potentially the Library Square, I'm not at this point personally in favor of a whole ordinance for the whole downtown, so.
Right, and I agree with the Library Square, and I agree with, like I said, everything that's been said tonight. I just want to make sure that you're aware that at this point, if there was an ordinance on the books for a violation of the city code, we wouldn't have the personnel to be able to go out there and write a ticket, because it would be an infraction under the city code.
So follow-up though, if it was just an ordinance for Library Square, would you be able to enforce that at all? I'm hearing,
We, honestly, with the type of calls that we respond to right now, no, we would not.
Okay.
I mean, now that's not saying if we weren't, somebody was driving by. I believe there was somebody complaining to the council about a year ago when we did write a ticket for somebody that threw a cigarette in the middle of the road under the littering ordinance. That was just happened to be an opportunity. The officer was right there and had the cigarette thrown down in front of him.
and just from your professionalism and, there's signage, I would like for this challenge to be, to be solved. My only other fear, and maybe I'm just being paranoid, but even with signage, then I see citizens, confronting individuals
Which could lead
and
to
a
that.
chance for violence or,
Right.
to even get further than what anyone wants, or a librarian going out there and, anyway,
Well, and
what would be your,
Signage, and I don't know if there's some signs out there right now, but maybe just, if the council was to act for that particular block, with just signage, not an ordinance, but then we go back and look at it in 6 months, and if there's 50, cigarette butts in the fountain, of course, that's not what, we want to see happen, and maybe we'll get some more people.
so you're okay with peers, with fellow citizens kind of,
I think
doing
that's,
some,
add a little peer pressure,
Okay.
onto it. Like I said, I just don't want to give false hope. If there was an ordinance put in place right now, we just wouldn't have under our call volume, we just wouldn't be responding to if the library called and said, we've asked this man to put out a, cigarette 2 times and he's refusing. Yeah, we're gonna have to respond. It's a low priority for us.
I have a quick question for legal. If we put a sign, now my understanding from Beth's testimony is that we have to work with NDC and Gardner Company if we were gonna put up signs, is that correct? Yes, because that's not our area. What authority does a sign put in place versus an ordinance? What is the, yeah,
Yeah, Mayor and Council, property owners have the ability and the right to police their own property in any way they would like. So if there are signs up on a private property, they can enforce so you could have the, library director coming out and saying, don't smoke, or citizens saying, don't smoke. The police can also respond to that if there is some contention that has arisen. The point of the ordinance would be to attach an enforcement ability on the side of the city to have some legal teeth to say, if you do that, then the city can then enforce it, and the consequences are A, B, and C.
and if I understand correctly, with an ordinance, the city can enact an ordinance without the approval of NDC or the Gardner Company for the downtown library square, is that correct?
Mayor and Council, that's correct, yeah. So the ordinance would police all areas in the downtown. For example, the way Boise does it is they have, a 20-foot in front of any entrance of the building, but then they also have designated that grove as an area where there can be no smoking at all. And then they have it by resolution of the city clerk that can establish areas throughout the city that you are able to smoke. So I know a lot of business owners have said, what if we have employees that want to go out and take a smoke break? There can be designated areas by ordinance that allow that. So yeah, the ordinance would police essentially the entire downtown block.
And one last question. So Caldwell recently, as they have the signs up, Destination Caldwell has placed the signs up for the Caldwell ice rink and the event area. Was that enacted by an ordinance, or is that strictly, they've got signs?
Mayor and
Do you know?
Council, as of now, that is just, they have signs.
Okay.
Caldwell also has an ordinance for public event centers, and so they have restricted smoking for some of their city-owned event centers, which the plaza should eventually fall under. So there's kind of an umbrella that the plaza will eventually fall under by ordinance, but as of now, Destination Caldwell put those signs up throughout the plaza, not by city ordinance.
Thank you for the clarification. Further questions?
Chief, what's the policy for officers smoking on duty?
It's the city policy. I think we had a no smoking policy at one time, but I think they've kind of lightened up on that. We currently don't have any officers that smoke that I'm aware of.
Okay. I
So-
know it.
So our policy at the police department is, the chewing tobacco and the smoking, you can't do it in uniform. And of course, our building's a non-smoking building, so they shouldn't be
Right.
smoking in the parking garage or anything like that.
I was just thinking, on duty, obviously you don't want to have an officer walking up with a cigarette in his
No,
mouth.
They used to. They
Oh, don't look at me, I didn't smoke.
No, I'm saying 20 years ago, we could do that, or they could do that, but no,
Yeah,
there's nobody now that smokes.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
So, you bet.
Councilwoman Levi.
Thank you, Mayor. You're good at reading my mind or something here. If we put signs up, I'm just wondering if that, signs in themselves might be enough to kind of dissuade some of that activity without having to enact an ordinance. But some of the concerns I have is downtown, we do have, for instance, a vape business and we have some bars, and that kind of goes hand in hand, their livelihood. And so my understanding would be that they could smoke in those establishments. It would just be kind of like, if we were to do something downtown, it would be kind of like the Outdoor Clean Air Act type thing, but they could still smoke in their business. And I do have follow-ups.
I can't speak to that.
Yeah, Mayor and Councilwoman Levi, I can tell you what some other cities do. Boise, for example, has restricted it even inside buildings, so that's why in bars downtown and things like that, you can't smoke inside that area. There are other cities that do only police that outside on the sidewalks or 20 feet within an entrance, and then within a private establishment, you can make your decision as to what you want to do in your private establishment. So it would just be outside that business where the city would have enforcement action if you were to craft the ordinance that way.
Thank you. To follow up on that, then I think if we did have any employees at the library that do smoke, they wouldn't be able to step outside and smoke if there was no smoking on the plaza. So how do you conquer that? Because I know myself personally, to cross the street, it's an event. And so that's extra time from their break to go to smoke. And then as far as the library, I'm thinking, well, if they're supposed to be 20 feet away from the door, that's very subjective. So do you paint a red line and say that's 20 feet away from the door? I don't know, and I know that the library staff does not have time to be out there constantly policing the 20-foot mark. But to follow up on that, I have had a lot of people over the last several months come to me and say, when you walk into the library, into that lobby, it smells, and some of it is from the smoke. And so it is something that we definitely do need to address with respect to our private business owners as well.
So this item tonight, we have action item on there because we have to have action if we're going to take action. The question would be, what is the will of the council this evening? Do we want to take action on this item this evening, or do we want to leave this as a discussion item, do further research, and come back?
Mayor Kling, I don't like smoke, and I don't like going into the library smelling like smoke. There's a reason I don't smoke. Joe. But the thing is that I'm concerned with I'll call it zone ordinancing, where we pick spots and put ordinances on those zones. For example, the library. I also believe that nowhere on city property should there be any smoking, period. So I would like further discussion, Mayor, on this issue, and I fully support Councilman Hogamone's proposal here, but I'd like a little more information.
Thank you, Councilman Rodriguez. And Claire, I'm sorry, I could not see who that was back there. That was you. I am so sorry.
That's okay.
Otherwise, I
That's
would have,
fine.
I thought, I didn't know you were here, so.
That's fine. That's
Thank
fine.
you.
Good evening, Mayor Clayton, council members. We had an experience just this afternoon with 4 men smoking in the stairwell of the parking garage. We got complaints about it, and Alex Wade, who works in our building with facilities, called the police, and they came and spoke to the gentleman. So I believe that was when it was raining, probably some of the guys you saw earlier. We just happen to be right now putting out our annual survey. It's been out since last Friday. It's going to go through February, so it's been out a little less than 4 days. We'd had 155 comments or answers since Friday, and as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. And one of the questions we put is, currently Idaho Statute 39-5502 states that smoking is prohibited 20 feet from the library entrances. Do you think this is an adequate distance? It was a yes/no answer. We had, out of the 155, we had 52% say yes and 47% say no, so that's pretty equal. But what's more interesting is we had an optional comment section. We got 37 comments. A couple of them are, I've had to walk past people smoking in front of the library. I usually park on the side drop-off box or the parking garage. My sons both have asthma, and I try to keep them away from the smokers. I don't think smoking should be allowed on library grounds. Then I wish there was no smoking on premises. The waterfall and grass area is a fun part of the library experience for kids, and smoking takes away part of that special aspect. So all 37 of these comments are very negative about smoking. I'm sure by the end of the month, we'll get many more. I made copies if you'd like them, but I just wanted to let you know that it is a real concern, not just for the health aspects, but for their kids, in our community. And they see some pretty rough stuff out in front of the library, and our staff can only do so much. I go out there very often. In fact, someone can sit on those benches at 20 feet. They can sit on the benches and smoke. It's 20 feet is in front of the benches. We've measured it, so.
Claire, can I ask you a question? So if, whether it be an ordinance or signs, it's difficult to enforce because we don't have the police to actually enforce it, would you recommend that they proceed with doing one or the other, doing something in hopes that it would help? What would your recommendation be?
Yes, absolutely. Something. The 20 feet, as I said, is not really adequate when you're talking about those benches right there. I understand all the problems with an ordinance, but anything that would empower us, we know we have this, we've all known for years. The old library actually had a line along the sidewalk that was 20 feet from the entrance. I'm not suggesting you put a line, but something that would help empower us and my staff. We don't want to be out there all the time, but we do as much as we can.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm hearing from you is whether or not we have police that can enforce it, you're asking for something to empower you, and you're recommending that we have no smoking in Library Square.
Yes.
Whether it be a signage or an ordinance. Okay, thank you. I guess I have one more question, and that is, which does empower the library more, a sign or an ordinance? Does it matter?
Mayor and council, not necessarily. An ordinance would empower the city more because it would have that enforcement ability. But if we're unable to enforce it under the ordinance, the sign in the ordinance, it's going to be pretty much one and the same.
Okay, thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, even with an ordinance, there still could be signs, right? We're not talking about either or here.
Correct, Mayor and council. And you would want signs even with the ordinance.
that's what I'm-
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I understood correctly, though, in order for us to have signs, that would mean NDC would have to approve that and Gardner.
Not if it's an ordinance. If you have
But just
signage,
signs.
yes. Just signage, it requires NDC and Gardner. If it's an ordinance, it does not require, it's a city ordinance. To put signage on the property would still require their approval, but we can enact an ordinance that takes care of that issue without NDC and Gardner approving it.
So to follow up on that, to make sure I understand then, if we were to enact an ordinance, we would want the citizens to know, because it would be back to one of those sidewalk things, obscure that they don't know. So we would still need to go before NDC to get those signs up, right?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Nope. Okay, so what's the will of the council? It's late, it's 8 and getting late. So are we willing to, I'll leave it to you if someone wants to make a motion?
Are you going to say something?
Madam Mayor,
Excuse me.
fellow council members, jotted down some thoughts, just listen to what people have to say. And holy cow, I don't know how we got here. My doctor smoked over me when I was a kid while he worked on me in his office. And now, if you're a smoker, we're going to criminalize them and make Joe be the tobacco police. I'm not going to support any kind of ordinance. Signs maybe, and that's up to NDC and Gardner Company. But really, when you do something like this, it's a freedom issue. It's a tyranny of the majority. Most of us don't smoke, so let's impose our moral views on these folks that do smoke. My brother, he works 50, 55 hours a week delivering FedEx packages, hardworking man. One thing he does enjoy is having a fat cigar when he gets a break in a public park. We were up in Seattle once, and he was just so mad that his favorite Seattle spot, they wouldn't let him smoke in parks anymore. And he doesn't throw his butt on the ground. So we have a littering problem that's already against the law. That can be enforced. Move the benches into within 20 feet of the front door. Just move them a little closer is one option. Let's see, what else? Sounds like we have more of a hobo or homeless issue than we do a smoking issue. That's the type of people that are smoking out there, but you can get politically incorrect to talk about that. So we don't want to be like Boise. We've talked about that in some ways. We don't want to be like Seattle, except maybe the Space Needle. I like that. Anyway, I'm not going to support an ordinance. Send it back to NDC and Gardner if they want to put up signs.
Okay. So that would leave it at the discussion with no vote. And where do we go with that? Do we do, what do we do? Okay?
I think I owe it to, I think there's a tyranny of the minority. If someone's smoking, secondhand smoke is a property rights issue. So alcohol is different. We don't allow alcohol in Library Square. Someone to sit there and just drink alcohol in their own body. You're putting smoke into somebody else's body. When you read these letters, kids with asthma, pregnant mothers coming in, I know it's one person smoking. It's not criminalizing smoking. It's wanting them to have enough decency to not smoke in front of children and pregnant women and kids with asthma. But the library staff, econ development, I look at Indian Creek Plaza and Caldwell and other areas where families have gone and have had overwhelmingly positive feedback about the experience. They're not having that experience in Nampa. And so in that sense, I think it's the tyranny of the minority. It's the few people who just don't have enough common sense and decency to smoke in front of places of children. And that's what prompted me to bring this. And, you know, I've been mulling it over for several months, and I know a lot of people have said, Rick, when are you gonna, this is low-hanging fruit to just ask people to not smoke in this area, especially if you don't allow them to consume alcohol in this area. I think a case could be made, alcohol does more damage to other people than someone putting alcohol in their own body. So I'll make a motion, because I just don't want to keep things on the agenda, keep going and going and going. So I think I'll make a motion that, and it could be voted down. My first motion will be an ordinance, and I realize that Chief Huff, I don't expect you guys to enforce it. There's 50 butts. I'm not lying. I took pictures. I realize that it's hard to enforce the littering, but those butts are coming from people smoking in Library Square. So I want to get to the root cause. And so there was some feedback from Boise that just having the ordinance deterred some behavior, just people aware that they're not supposed to smoke in the area. So I hope that if this can improve the experience of our library patrons, not having to battle it, then I support it. So my motion would be to direct legal to draft an ordinance that would apply to Library Square. When I say Library Square, the internal areas, which would cover the bench areas, the grass areas, and the fountain areas. So not the alleyway or the sidewalks. I realize the sidewalks on the side, people can smoke there. So at least the Library Square, the plaza on the inside. So I think that's the property, by the way, that's under the joint agreement jurisdiction. So that's what my motion would be, to at least direct legal to draft an ordinance on Library Square as defined by the lawn area, including the benches and the fountain area.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
Yes, Mayor, a question on that. So if we were to pass that ordinance, then it goes before NDC to see if it'll allow us to put signs, or we'll pass the ordinance without signs?
Well, from what I understand, the ordinance is under our jurisdiction, so
Right.
signs that regulate ordinances from the city, and Maureen's about to speak, but I mean, whether we allow skateboarding on public sidewalks and stuff like that, I believe is under an ordinance of the city, so it's up to city staff, I believe, on how they place signs and where they place signs to inform the public that the ordinance exists. So I would entertain a follow-up administrative staff, how the signs would be placed. There are some signs up there, I believe, already, on the poles. Maybe I'm wrong. I think there's signs about some, I can't recall what's on those signs, and this isn't to regulate dogs on leashes, unleashed, and I think we maybe have an ordinance on some of those other things, but in Indian Creek Plaza, the sign I saw was dogs can't be unleashed running around. This isn't a dog park. Unfortunately, some people lack common sense, but this is just strictly the smoking and the vaping, so.
Any further discussion?
Mayor Kling. Couple of questions that come to my mind. I won't be supporting this motion as an ordinance. I wish you had brought it before the Napa Development Corporation first to get that feedback before you made this motion tonight. You might have gotten a little bit more support had you done that. Along with Councilman Skog, I believe that there are those people in our population that this is an acceptable lifestyle. This is something my parents did when I was growing up, especially the World War II era. Cigarettes were a common thing. I don't smoke. I'm not trying to be an advocate for it, but I believe in private rights, people's rights. You're trying to legislate, in a sense, something that's not a banned substance from an open area. Inside the facilities, yes, it's already taken care of in the Idaho Clean Air Act. Outside the facility, within 20 feet of the front door, it is an understanding that you can't smoke there. So, I mean, that information is already available and is enforceable. To take it further than that, you might as well start going into all the city parks and all the open areas in and around the city. And again, when you tell someone they can't smoke inside the facility, you got to go outside, but you can't go outside unless you go a block away, something to that effect. That's not a friendly environment either. So I have a hard time supporting your motion. I think that, like Chief Huff has stated, it's not something that is enforceable really from a standpoint of our local law enforcement. So approaching it with signage, whether it's something that is more of something that the library tries to take care of themselves, or we can help in a way of, if you have to put in lines saying what 20 feet away is. I don't know, like Councilman Skog said, move the benches closer. So I won't be supporting your motion.
Madam Mayor, I am also not in favor of the ordinance. I am in favor of signage, but that would be another motion that would need to be made where it would go before NDC and Gardner. So that would be my
Okay.
approach on it.
So because there is a motion on the floor and it's been seconded, we're going to do roll call on this, and then we'll go from there. So roll call.
Brunner?
No.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
No.
Skog?
No.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
It's 3 and 3.
Wow.
That might put me on the spot now.
This one definitely does. Understanding all the discussion, and I have tremendous regard for all of the discussion. Having listened to the library and their cry for help, I'm going to say yes to the no smoking ordinance. Okay, action item number 6.5 on the agenda. This is the discussion adopting Boise's towing regulations in Nampa. Thank you, Beth. So for those of you waiting for your agenda items, you have my sincerest apologies that this is a much longer meeting because we're talking about some very interesting topics tonight. So, thank you.
Mayor and council, if you've heard the last two council meetings, some of the challenges that we've had in downtown Nampa with some property that's privately owned with what some might consider aggressive towing. We decided to kind of do some research, and I thank Kristen in the mayor's office for pulling the Boise ordinance for us to take a look at it. I've just jotted down some high-level notes for you to consider. The question before you essentially tonight is, are you interested in any type of towing ordinance on non-consent towing? And if you are there certain aspects that we would like to pull from Boise's, or do we not want any of it? So just at a high level, they do require annual licensing requirements for all towing companies to be registered with the city. There is a fee in place for that. It has a vehicle inspection component to it. All operators are required to receive nationally recognized operator certification of training. No operators are allowed to have any criminal records in regard to harassment or theft. And they require impound lot standards such as security and fencing and lighting. Any documented verbal or physical abuse towards citizens can result in the revocation of a license. It does require companies to take credit cards. That has been some of the complaints that we've heard, that the current company only allows cash in this particular instance. There is an outlined process for revoking of licenses and posting requirements for private property to allow for towing. It does have that vehicles must be towed to an impound lot within the city limits. That the release of vehicles to the owners has to be available 24 hours a day. And if the vehicle has not been removed by the time the owner gets to the lot, they can not remove the vehicle from the lot. They have to release it to the owner on the site. There is a maximum rates that are set by the Boise ordinance. So for a regular light duty vehicle, it's $125 for the initial towing with a daily storage rate of $25. An after hours gate fee, which is established outside of Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, of $50. And then a mileage fee of $4 per mile for the towing from the location that it was towed to the nearest impound lot. And then a labor fee if it exceeds 1 hour for an additional $75 an hour. And then the penalties, if a tow company violates this ordinance, is a misdemeanor and a minimum fine of $150 to $500. The second violation is $300 to $1,000. Third violation is $500 to $1,000, with subsequent violations up to $1,000 and 6 months in jail. So that's kind of a brief rundown of what all is in the 16 pages of the Boise ordinance.
Mayor Klein? So I read this entire chapter here. So this would prohibit anyone from removing a vehicle that's not in danger or causing a concern, just in a private parking area, say downtown, for 24 hours. You cannot remove a vehicle for 24 hours until after 24 hours has been there, right?
I don't remember that particular aspect.
It's in the code here.
Okay.
Yeah. So would that alleviate our problems with downtown?
If we required that there has to be a 24-hour notice, it would most likely, because most of the patrons that have been towed within downtown they're there for a matter of hours at most.
Right. So what would be the solution? I mean, we have to understand the property owner's rights as far as that goes. So
In answer to that question, Beth's question tonight is, would we as a council like to look at creating an ordinance? And then what I would suggest is that we allow, based on the discussions that have taken place, staff to work on an ordinance language and bring it back to council for their review. And we could give consideration to that, because there's some challenges with 24 hours, but this has been many times within the hour. But really, the biggest issue has been the cost, the price, and the cash. So really, this question is just to ask, would the council like us to consider putting an ordinance language together and bringing it back to you for review?
Mayor, I was wondering if legal or someone could check into this. I had a couple attorneys this past week talk to me about this very issue, and they had brought up the abandoned for certain hours, but I thought they said 48 hours, somewhere in a code or a title, and I don't know what exactly they were referring to, and I didn't get a chance to go back to my notes. But they had also made the comment that not only if it's a private lot, it needs to be posted, but it also needs to either be chained or fenced. And so I don't know where to go really to look for that, but I think that that's something important we need to look into, because I do want to respect the fact that property owners do have rights, but I also want to respect what the people that are parking there or not supposed to be parking there. And I don't believe we as a council should be going and telling a business this is what you can charge and this is what you can't charge.
So, Madam Mayor, this is a far out question, but there's been accusations made, at least to me, that this is kind of a partnership between private business and the towing, that there's some kickbacks going on. So I take it there's no proof of that. That's just total rumor and accusations being made, but
Mayor and council, we don't have any proof
Okay.
of that or any knowledge. The Boise ordinance does also eliminate that, or makes that
right.
situation
I understand,
illegal.
so.
Mayor, I forgot one other comment, please, and maybe this is to the police chief. Several months ago, when we talked about the towing situation and the list that the police department has, and they call them kind of going down on a rotation basis, one, if this company is on there and how their price compares to other companies, again, I don't believe that we should be setting a standard rate, but I'm thinking as a person that if I got towed or somebody got towed, if one company comes because the police department called them, they were on the rotation, and they're going to charge me $125, and then the next company that's on the rotation, and it happens to be my accident, they're going to charge me $325. And because they were called, as a consumer, what am I supposed to do?
I think there are two different things that we're actually talking about here. So what you're talking about is they're regulated as part of being under our policy. We do check, to make sure they're in line with other tows. What this would be a non-preference tow. If you were at Walmart and you had abandoned your car, we wouldn't tow that on behalf of the police department. The property owner would tow that. And if my understanding is, it's the property owner of the lot that has made the deal with the tow company. And again, we don't have any regulations over that. I'm not sure which tow company it is, but the 13 that are currently on our tow rotation at the police department, we check those to make sure that they're all comparable, so you're not having a $300 bill to tow a car 2 blocks or whatever it is.
I seem to remember that, but I thought I'd get that on the record because I know that some of the people that voiced the concern are listening via live stream tonight. Thank you.
So could I suggest to council to move forward that, a question I have for council, and this does not need to be a vote, does council oppose us spending time relooking at this ordinance?
I do not.
I do not.
Okay, so,
Madam Mayor?
yes, do you?
Yes, anything to do with price controls, as we move more like Boise, looking at a Boise code, I would strongly oppose if we're going to tell any tow company what they can or can't charge. It may be very outrageous, but it's not for us to go into the business so you can't charge X in a private property deal. So some of these things are interesting, though. But as far as price controls, if it would need to be a motion to direct this to be looked at, it would be with no price controls. I would be supportive of looking
And I agree with that, and I don't want to get into that, Bruce.
So we've got, Boise does, I mean,
Yeah.
so I guess basically then, what we're saying is it's okay if somebody wants to charge $365, and just what has happened, we're saying that that's okay, that can happen here, is
Well,
that correct?
Mayor, Council, the price control element, I share the sentiment that's already been expressed. What I don't like, that there's stipulations as far as what the truck needs to be capable of doing. If there was a stipulation that could be added, there's been numerous complaints of some people not having 365 cash in their pocket. And if they don't get their car that night, then I think it goes up the following day, because there's a per day enforced rate. And some people don't have access to $365 cash. So if not so much a price control, but maybe one stipulation is that they have to have adequate trucks, but they should also be able to process a credit card for someone who doesn't have $365 cash, or their car's held ransom because of their inability to basically get it back. So I don't know if that's maybe an adequate middle ground, but I am sympathetic. I don't carry $365 cash.
I don't have
That's, so buggers, I don't have 365 cash on me. But, and some people say that there's limits on how much they can withdraw even, and I'm sympathetic to that. There have been some people on the low income low-income members of our community say, you know, maybe you have 365 cash laying around, I don't, and so I wasn't able to get my car on time, and then it escalates each successive day. And they insist it has to be cash or you won't get your car back. So I don't know, I'd be open to other ideas here. Maybe that is a reasonable stipulation, is to require that at least the towing company be able to process more than just cash in hand.
Yeah, Councilman, I'm in agreement, yeah.
I'm really concerned. I'm actually very concerned because if what they hear from the bench here is that it doesn't matter what you charge, you could rip off the people in Nampa and you can get away with it, is what we just said. As long as you have a credit card, it's okay.
Hey, Madam Mayor, I'll go with price controls if we can go to the hospitals on MRIs and CAT scans and limit that too, and I'm all in.
But that's sometimes by choice. This is, I mean, you can choose to go to a different hospital, but when you get towed, you don't get to choose.
Not an emergency.
Well, well, let me clarify something, Mayor, and I agree with you too. I do, because I've had constituents tell me that is way too much money. Okay, well, you know what the simplest solution is? Don't park there.
Don't park there.
Right? So, but I don't want to have them, our patrons pay that much money. I don't want that. How can we enforce that? I don't know, and that's why I want to go further with this and kind of look into it and see what we can do. We've got to do something. I don't know what that is.
And Mayor and Councilman Scott, my concern, I don't like price controls either. My understanding, though, that this is happening even when non-business hours, that someone or whoever, I don't know what you call it, whether somebody's just watching out there or whatever, but letting the business know, hey, there's someone parking in there, and then they're calling the tow company and towing when there's plenty of parking. Yes, you know, during business hours, by all means, that private business, you know, to me, it has a right, but to be gouging citizens of Nampa after hours, when somebody, whether they don't see a sign or do see a sign, I mean, to me, that just, we had two ladies last council meeting, I believe, two high citizens, you know, just strong citizens of Nampa, and I thought they were abused.
Councilman, Mayor, undoubtedly, it's bad behavior, but then is that the role of the government, you, to make it so it's enforceable if they do wrong, that we're gonna send Chief Joe out to arrest them when they're smoking in front of the library too?
Yeah, but my, and not to go too far, but if it's $125, $150 fine, I think the message gets, I don't think any citizen's gonna park there again. It's $350, I just think it's way over bounds for these businesses to
So
be
is it
doing.
the role of government for you to step in and say you can't charge them? That's what you have to decide.
It's a very
It's a
fundamental
tough question.
principle. Councilwoman Levi.
Mayor, so I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier, which I think will clear up some of our concerns, is we need to go back and find out what the law or the ordinance states on the towing. What is an abandoned vehicle? How is it 24 hours? Is it 48 hours? Does it apply to a private parking lot? And is the private parking lot supposed to have adequate signage, and is it supposed to be chained, or is it supposed to be fenced? And that's something that I would really like to know, because I think that would help clear up a lot of things as far as people going to park in that lot to
There may
begin
be
with.
an answer here, I don't know. Right.
Mayor, Council, excuse me. This is a non-consent towing legislation, if I have that word right. Non-consent towing services, which is different from abandoned vehicles. Abandoned vehicles are, you know, where you'll see it on the side of the road and it hasn't moved for 48 hours and you can make that determination or whatnot. But this is just, there is, I believe it's state code that dictates the signage requirements for it. So it does have to be signed that it's, you know, at risk of towing. So it's just for private property where it's an unauthorized parking person. So their signs do state that it's okay to park there if you're visiting one of the businesses. We actually had complaints from some of their own customers that they were towed. And that's, I guess, between those individuals. But so it's different from abandoned vehicles. And we haven't seen anything in our research that it has to be fenced or roped off or guarded in any way.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Kling. Beth, does the city of Boise use tire locks on vehicles?
I don't know that.
So you wouldn't know if it would be on private property or if it's only used on the streets?
Correct, I don't know.
Because I know that they do. I just don't know what the policy is around it and why a vehicle has to be towed instead of just tire locks put on it to immobilize it until the individual shows back up, and then obviously then there's a fine associated with it. It seems like it's exerted effort to haul it off to a yard when you can just lock it in place. So I'm not certain of the need for an ordinance although I was the one, if you remember, I'm the one that brought this forward as a topic of conversation because of a local business owner that was asking for consideration.
Well, this is a different topic,
know,
though.
this is
This is
different,
a
but
very
it's-
different topic.
But it's still, it's around the towing. So I guess my question is the need for a towing requirement when vehicle locks could be used and accomplish the same thing with a lot less cost to the owner.
Okay, so tonight we have two issues at hand, and I'm going to ask that we move on. The first issue, this came up because we had a downtown business owner, and the issue around this is a specific lot that we've had a problem with. And out of that, so we're not looking at enacting anything and looking at an ordinance only for one specific lot related to that lot. What we have done on that is we've asked Streets to make some signs and actually better sign the lot. I'm not sure if they're up yet, but we're working on the city side to ensure that patrons clearly see. So we as a city have taken the initiative for the downtown businesses to ensure that people know it's a private lot. Okay, so we're taking some action on that particular issue. Out of this came some people that came forward saying that we're really being taken advantage of. And so the question was, do we protect our citizens by enacting an ordinance related to towing, specifically off of private lots? It almost sounds as though there's a lot, I don't know if we need more discussion or we need public input. You know, this is really a question of why were we elected? And I'm curious what the citizens of our community would like us to do. Because really, it's really up to the citizens. Do they want us to enact an ordinance to protect them, or would they say, no, please don't? So is this something we could do a survey on? I'm just
Mayor,
curious.
Council, I think the improved signage is good, and if there isn't lights on the existing signs, and I know that some patrons said that they were confused because there are addresses listed on the sign, and they thought that they were patronizing one of the listed businesses, only to find out that their car's towed. It greatly disturbs me when 20 cars are towed out at $365 a pop. You do the math, that's over a $6,000 a night. And that there's hardworking business owners who don't make that in a month. It's clearly a problem. I think one of the best things we could do is, we're talking about it, and if it's made aware in the public not to park in that lot, I'm sympathetic to how people feel victimized, but at the same time, if it's unlikely, but someone might be parked in my driveway at home, and if I'm going to call a towing company to have the car, I know that this is unlikely, but if there's a price control and then I were to find out that the tow company that took it away actually charged more than some city ordinance that limited it, and I know it's unlikely, but I think, you have an isolated problem, and don't want to create an ordinance that applies more broadly than what's taking place. But I would like a stipulation at least of the type of tow truck, and then liability if the tire's damaged. That was one complaint I received, is someone's tire was damaged, and they're rather convinced it was under the towing. And for them to take other forms of payment than just cash, because, so if there's any stipulations, I would favor that, but not the price control. But that's not because I like what's happening. I don't think anyone up here likes what is anyone here running that towing company up here? I don't think so. So, I mean, none of us are profiting off this. And I don't want to demonize. I'm sure some of these people working at the tow company are hardworking blue-collar people, and they're told to go dispatch a vehicle on private property, and they might not like what they're doing either, but they're doing their job, and it's a private property issue. So I wish there was more consideration. I just don't want to force the hand of the other than improved signage, better lighting. Maybe you require that person to have better lights, but to do a survey, I think that can create, actually, this is where I'm concerned about sort of, that there's positive feedback from our community, but I think if we were to put a survey on whether their healthcare bill should be slashed in half, or, all kinds, can their car payment be slashed in half? Can their mortgage be cut in half?
It's about towing.
I understand, but I mean, it creates this impression that there isn't responsibility on the part of someone who violated property right, the property rights of another person, so.
So we need to, Madam Mayor, just direct question to Beth. Has the main private owner, is there a main private owner for this lot?
Yes.
Has he or she, have you or someone else had conversation with him, asking him in a nice way, but directly, the reason they're using this tow company?
I know the mayor's office has reached out and spoken to his office.
We didn't ask why they're using that tow company, no.
Okay.
They understand that there's a signage issue and a towing issue, but we've not had any
As
discussion
far
about
as,
this.
yeah, a towing company that's, you know, it has that type of regulations, high prices plus cash only, okay. Thanks, that's what I was wondering.
I'm going to recommend, unless there is an action item requested by the council, I'm going to ask that we move off of this discussion. And if someone wants to bring it back in another council meeting, you're welcome to. Would that be okay? That you can
Well,
bring it back as an
Unless
action
there's
item?
consensus, are we allowed to, rather than adopt what's submitted here, which is a lot of information, would we be allowed to at least, I would be entertained making the motion that would require as a stipulation, at least for the towing company, that, that they at least take something other than cold hard cash as a form of adequate payment from someone who finds out late at night that they've been towed and they go to retrieve their car, they don't have cash and they can't get their car back. Maybe that falls, I mean, if there's consensus on that, I don't know if legal, if that's an appropriate,
So what would you do about no criminal records, any training, annual licensing, any of that?
criminal records on the part of,
The towing company? Because it goes back to our towing policy. I mean, it's a different thing.
sure, well, if they're in
but
business, I
what-
think you go after them another way. If there's some mechanism to say that they shouldn't be in business, then there should be an adequate way to adjudicate that. But as far as just this lot, this private lot, if cars are being towed, I would make a motion that we at least entertain as one stipulation, not price control, although I hate the fact that it's $365. It seems ridiculous. But Mayor, it sounds like you're doing a good job at least entertaining the idea of improved signage around the area to warn people and make it more clear to people. I think that there's access to the lot, maybe from the alleyway, am I wrong? They just closed it, okay, good. I was gonna say, maybe that would be an adequate stipulation, because it is possible, though not likely, that people are parking from the alleyway, they wouldn't see some of the signage. So I think if we need to have more signage, or at least control where there's access to the lot without clear presence of signs, I would support improved signage. And one stipulation I'd put is that they need to be able to take more than cash. And if they can't take more than cash, then we say they're not allowed to tow the vehicle. But that's, you know, I know you say your preference to
So-
move off the conversation, but I would at least be willing tonight to make a motion that would include those items.
Okay, so the signage has already been done, which would probably not, well, it's in process. It's in process. So need the clarity, if you're making a motion, are you asking that the city establish an ordinance that requires that a towing company allow for credit card payment?
I would like to look at that ordinance, since it's not written and presented in front of us. So, I mean, can a motion be made to at least direct legal to present before us at a future council meeting an ordinance that would include at least that stipulation?
Okay, so there's been a motion. There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'm almost afraid to ask if there's any discussion, but I have to. So-
Fair enough.
We just have masking tape up here.
No, I'm sorry, it just, is there further discussion? I want to welcome discussion, it's good.
Can you read back the motion then?
So,
The motion is to direct council to create an ordinance that would include at least one stipulation for the tower to process more than just cash as an option, as a form of payment.
credit card.
Yeah, to include credit cards, or gold, or Bitcoin, or whatever, I don't know.
So is your motion to amend or somehow supplement what was put in our packet?
That was,
Striking what's in the packet, yeah.
that was
Just the
just,
current ordinance that we have on the books?
Mhm.
Or do we have one on the books?
We don't have.
We don't have
between-
one on the books.
Correct. And that was just strictly Boise's, just for example,
Okay.
an example. So this would be creating a new ordinance.
It's late at night. I would, since we don't have an ordinance, I would entertain, well, I made the motion. I would amend the motion to include form of payment, but I think that there are some reasonable protections put in place as far as what's required of the tow truck and how the vehicle is removed. And actually, I'm not prepared right now to go through every single line to say what should or shouldn't be included in the ordinance.
So Councilman Hogaman, my question then, you are looking for us to adopt Boise's ordinance?
No.
With those changes? No. So what ordinance are you looking to adopt?
Mayor and council, if I can maybe put this into some clear terms for you. How about we go back and look at Boise's ordinance? I'll go through, and I've written down all of the notes based on what you guys have said you might be interested in adopting. What I'll do is I'll put together a draft ordinance based on those comments, delete everything that you said you do not want in there. I'll bring it back, and then we can discuss whether or not that's something you guys want to adopt.
Great idea.
So the motion would be to direct legal counsel to bring a draft ordinance back for
And
your discussion
yes.
and approval.
And that was, what I was looking for was to direct legal counsel to draft an ordinance. The one item that was included as part of the motion was that they process,
I will make the motion.
not restricted.
I will make the
Okay.
motion that we accept legal's recommendation. Is
Okay,
that
we
what-
can't have a motion on top of a
Okay.
motion. However, this motion, as long as you say, I'm going to amend my motion to be exactly what she just said. Is that correct?
I think she clarified what my motion was.
Okay,
But yes, so,
perfect. Okay,
yes.
who seconded it?
Yeah.
Bruce, did
Bruce
you?
seconded it.
I'm
So-
withdrawing my second because I don't know what the motion is.
Okay, so the motion is that we are directing legal counsel to create an ordinance for the city of Nampa. They will come back with a recommended ordinance based on the discussion that took place tonight. You don't have to accept done with motion, that's it. So we're directing legal counsel to draft an ordinance for the city of Nampa, and they're going to take into consideration all of the discussion tonight.
So
She'll come back with, it, and then we can adjust it after
So
that.
we do not need action, is what you're saying, Mayor?
Pardon?
We don't need action then on that.
Right.
Well, we do. There's a motion
We
on
do.
the table, and then I'm not sure if there's a second. Bruce, is that second?
Do we have to have a motion for this?
Because you seconded it, correct?
I did the first one,
So do you want to second the next one, which is this amended motion?
as long as there's no price controls.
Yes, I got you.
She's got it. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, and does this require a roll call? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Awesome. Okay, 6.6 on the agenda. This is to authorize the approval of a change order for a secondary pool boiler in the amount of $63,000 for the Nampa Rec Center. Darren did have this in his thing, and they do have it within their budget, but they have had it come back that it was considerably higher
So
than was
moved.
originally.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Okay, the next action item is a resolution for the wastewater upgrades, the $37 million Idaho Department of Environmental Quality State Revolving Fund Loan Offer and Agreement. This has been reviewed by legal counsel, and we're just adopting the resolution. Is that correct?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Brunner,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
We paused just long enough that Nate had to jump up and sit back down. Action item 6.9, this is to award the bid and authorize the mayor to sign the contract for the 2019 water meter equipment with Hydro Specialty Companies. Is that in the FY budget? Yes. Okay,
So move.
Second.
Geez, you guys.
discussion, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
And our next item is an action item. This is the first reading of the ordinance for the pressure irrigation annexations.
An ordinance of the City of Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, annexing a portion of the underlying irrigation district into the municipal irrigation district of the City of Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, and changing the boundaries thereof and directing the city engineer to alter the use and area map accordingly.
And there's a request to pass this under suspension of rules.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mayor, I think you jumped over 6.9, but we can come back to that.
That was what we just voted on.
The water meter.
The
Water meters. Mhm.
Oh, I
Yep.
wasn't quick enough then.
Sorry. So was there a motion to,
Yes, there was.
and
Yeah.
seconded?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Ogaboom?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And 611 will be removed from the agenda because this was the authorization to go to bid for that. So at that, I believe we have covered every item on the agenda. We will be recessing into executive session. We have 3 action items. Well, they're not action items. We have 3 items in the, it's an action item that we need to vote. But as we recess into executive session for the following, there's a motion to adjourn. I need a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061A to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent wherein the respective qualities of individuals are to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need. This paragraph does not apply to filling a vacancy in an elective office or deliberations about staffing needs in general. The next one is a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061E to consider preliminary negotiations involving matters of trade or commerce in which the governing body is in competition with governing bodies in other states or nations. And the third one is a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 242061B to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student. So I would stand a motion to adjourn into executive.
So
session.
moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Ogaboom?
Yes.
So as you all know, there are no specific decisions or votes taken in executive session, and my guess is everyone will be gone when we come back. So
See you
thank you for
Wednesday.
joining us. We will adjourn at the conclusion. Thank you.